hello everyone. Welcome to this new panel of Independent Thought. Today we are talking about the Supreme Court and various topics along with that. I have a great panel full of first-time guests here on the podcast, here on Independent Thought. So I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves really quickly, say their political leanings, what they do, whether you're a streamer or you're an author. And then we're going to get right into the topics. We're going to start over here to my right with a paradigm shift. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself, where they can find you at.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy the energy that I'm bringing to you today, I want you to do me a favor. Follow me at Twitch at twitch.tv/the_paradigm_shift. Please let Twitch know to give me back my username. I hate the underscores. We talk politics, we talk games, we talk poetry. I just did an IRL poetry performance stream just yesterday. If you're interested in seeing what the underground of the world of how to figure out and navigate through this very confusing time, if you need the pathway, come through the paradigm shift. Stay mad about your bad opinions. We shift paradigms here. Twitter.com/Marquise Paradigm. Man, go to the Twitch page. All the links is in the description down below. I'm on the YouTubes. I'm on the Instagrams. I'm on the TikToks. I'm on the everything. I'm not that old. I'm not going to do that to myself. And that's me.
All right. Tiberius, go ahead and go next.
All right. My name is Tiberius D. I studied in economics, political science. I lean kind of like right wings, kind of center right. I basically just get pissed off anytime the Republican Party talks, but I hate the Democrats. So that kind of gives you where I'm at. Overall, in general, is that my claim to fame is knowing quite a bit about geopolitics. I've been very busy since the Russians decided to restart history about a month ago. So that's been quite interesting. But I'm also a proud co-host of the Mascot podcast, along with doing some reviews content on my channel. Been really busy, but you can find me on Twitch and YouTube. Tiberius D, that's with a Y and not an I. Shouldn't be hard to find. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Next, we're gonna go down to Katarana. Oh, she wasn't ready.
I kind of want to do like an impression of Paradigm, like, what's up, guys? It's your girl, Katarana, back at here. But like, I'm not gonna do that. Hello, nice to be here. It's been a little while since I've streamed. I didn't know that Germany was known for engineering, but not for internet, and it's been pretty poopy. But I got an Ethernet cord, and I should be here without any stutters. Cool. I stream, not as much right now due to extenuating circumstances, but I am a physicist. I am currently in Germany for robotics work, and I will be in New York City soon for astrophysics work. So if you enjoy people that know how to use a calculator, you should come to my stream. I'm also starting up a new series on my channel, which is going to be called Forgotten News, where we go over news that the news thought was really important and then never completed the story. So we're going to be doing that on my channel. And yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to go up to Fluff.
Hello, I am Fluff. I make YouTube videos. Sometimes I stream, very rarely. I consider myself more of an academic. I have degrees in psychology, anthropology, finishing up my master's in psychology, and then moving on to mental health counseling. I'm known around Twitch for being the guy that likes to send a bunch of research and looking up studies. I like everyone on this panel so far, so let's have fun.
All right, and now we're going to go over to Aston Mack.
Yo, how's it going, everybody? You doing okay? Hope you're doing well. My name is Aston Mack. I am a streamer on Twitch, as also a real-life activist. That's right, I touch grass, and that's what my stream's about. Most of the time, on early in the week, I'll cover things, local news around the state of Florida. That's right, I'm living out here and surviving. It's crazy, but a lot of the time, I'm going to take my focus and show you guys what does activism look like on the ground. How can you affect the community around you? What do activists do? What do they eat? How do they breathe? How do they sleep? So that we can get a better idea and understanding of how to take control of our political narratives. You can find me online at twitch.com/AstonMackTV. You could also find me on Twitter at Aston Mack. Like, it's literally like, I'm like one of like 3 Astons in the country, and I'm the only Aston Mack. If you can't find me, then you're not trying. All right. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to this panel.
All right, and finally, Rootsy.
Hi, my name is Mo Rootsy. Irootsie. You can just call me Rootsy. I guess I am primarily known for my Twitter and for the fact that I wrote a book. You can buy it on Amazon. It has a very long title. It's called Your Right to Organic Tomatoes and Other Things Your Google Search Got Wrong. I am very new to streaming. This is the second time I have done it. I have a master's degree in justice law and society and a bachelor's in psychology. And I guess what you would either term a shit lib, depending on where you fall on the spectrum, or a sockdom.
All right, thank you, everyone. So we're going to go ahead and get started into the questions now. First and foremost, if you are watching this on Twitch or on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to everyone's channel. If you're watching this in the future, there'll be some links in the episode description for everyone's channel. So go ahead and just check that out right now, as well as some timestamps just in case. So our first question for today is going to be, what is the biggest takeaway that you have from the current Supreme Court hearings, and should people be tuning in? So we're going to start with a little intro statement from everyone, try to keep it around a minute, and then we're going to go into the open panel. We're going to start over to my right again with Paradigm Shift. That question to you first. What is your biggest takeaway from this Supreme Court hearing so far?
My biggest takeaway from the Supreme Court hearing is that everything is a sham and that we're all holding on by a simple thread to keep this country together. I think people should be tuning in because, as I've always said, maybe it's my ignorance when it comes to politics, or I should say political hearings. If you ask somebody a question and it's offensive, I feel like in political spaces, you can't smack the shit out somebody. So I feel like y'all should really be watching this, because if you feel upset over the type of questioning, if you start to hear, why are they asking these questions? You start to really realize who's in control, who's in power, and who has the authority to say and do what they do. And then you can really start to figure out, oh, wow, that's why things are messed up. This is why this person's doing that. So it gives you a better sense of how the actual inside the government system works. And it's stupid in my opinion, but that's for another question that you'll ask later.
Okay. All right. Tiberius, now down to you. What is your take on the Supreme Court hearing so far?
Yeah, so I'm actually probably going to go the opposite way for a little bit of different reasons. Number one is that I absolutely agree that it's a political shit show, but on the other side of that is that it's not one that matters a whole lot due to the fact that largely what these are is for political posturing, and I've kind of just had enough of that overall in general. But if we're going to get down to it, is that this is all about, do you have enough senators to confirm this? And the only people that would possibly matter here is if it's like a far left candidate that they put up, it would be the center left that would be there to say no, or if it was a center left candidate, the far left would say no. That I don't think is really even the case here. I'm pretty sure that Manchin, Sinema, all the people that are under fire in the Democratic Party right now are wanting to confirm this candidate. So it's largely just a chance for the left and the right to kind of posture, talk about what they want to talk about and what they want out of Supreme Court justice. But overall, if you want to keep your sanity and you want to actually or if you actually do want to watch this to see who cares about what, that's great. But listen to Senator Ted Cruz ask somebody, what does it mean to be a woman? I've got better shit to do. So I'm going to end it off with there.
All right. Only one amendment there. I think it was Marsha Blackburn who asked that question, but equally as ridiculous no matter who asked it. Next, we're going to go to Katarana.
Ted Cruz followed up by basically being like, wait, so you don't know what a woman is? So yeah, it continued for longer. I think what I'm learning is how much actual politics just looks like student politics and how much time people are wasting. There are so many other lines of questioning that could be done, and instead it is really just being taken as a moment for people to I don't know, more a little grandstand or get their little political Twitter clips out. It really does seem like it's kind of all with the knowledge of this is going to make news, that this is being done around. I also think that this has allowed me to see what intersectional person's experience and upper level looks like and how fucking painful it looks. I really want to start a like Ketanji therapy fund because this shit's been bananas. And yeah, I think people should pay attention to just go ahead and send emails to their senators saying, why are you spending so much time asking about like CRT when you could just ask her about like, I don't know, what is her interpretation of the Constitution? What are your qualifications? Things that are somewhat useful.
Absolutely. All right, next we're gonna go up to Fluff.
I think, yeah, you should watch it because you should see how insane Republican senators are. Asking Ketanji Brown about the Hawkins case 30% of the time is pretty ridiculous. Asking her if she knows what a woman is ridiculous. Asking her if what she feels about CRT, everyone, it's just a bunch of like weird, like I can't imagine being Ketanji Brown during this and being like, oh, everyone's just bringing up their personal like grievances, like that they have that has nothing to do with me. Like kind of what was Kat was saying. Like it's just she, rather than her needing a therapy session, she's like being turned into like this therapist for conservative Republican senators to just get their things out. And the reality is they can't talk about her qualifications because she's arguably one of the most qualified justices to ever be nominated. So this is what happens. This is how professionals act now in Congress, and you should see it so you can, get a good idea.
Absolutely. And now over to Aston Mack.
Okay, yeah, this is an interesting one, right? I want to go ahead and concur with Fluff. I think that the most interesting thing that's on display here is actually like Black excellence, right? Like you have like literally one of the most qualified people ever to be nominated for the Supreme Court. And if you can't see that, and then you when you tune in, you see how it's still divided, how there's still like this partisan divide that is like literally unbroachable. If you can't vote for Ketanji, then you're not going to vote ever for anything that is in the interest of the other party. It's a display of the wheels falling off of our political system and the toxicity that exists between the two-party duopoly that we have, right? Like, if we can't come together and say, like, this lady right here, and I'm not saying that all Republicans need to vote for her. I'm not saying that it needs to be but I'm saying the fact that every single one of them is going to vote against her is a study in itself of the political system. And specifically too, it's a study in Black excellence. She's not just like, kind of more qualified. She's not twice as good. She's nearly like she's easily like 4 or 5 times as good as any candidate that we've ever put up before. And I mean that wholeheartedly. And anybody that wants to argue that with me, we can fight about it. But the reality is if we cannot get behind her, if there's no like people breaking party lines for her, then there is never going to be a breaking of party lines. And you need to understand that. And then you need to deal with that like contextually. There's no reason for you to ever take the word of like somebody on the other side, because it's just going to be for theater. It's all for tribalism. It's all for game. We're not trying to elect the best people to have the best outcomes. We are simply towing the party line. And that's all I got to say about it.
Okay. And finally, over to Rootsie.
So there's a tiny part of me that is still an idealist that wants to tell people to watch this because it's always better for the populace to be more well-educated or more well-informed. But what I'm seeing is an optics battle between the Republicans and a jurisprudential scholar, and those never go well for the jurisprudential scholars. Especially when you have people like the aforementioned, Ted Cruz, who his entire political life has basically just been like being as stupid as he could possibly be, while still maintaining like the ability to get reelected. There is a fear, like I know it's going to happen. The framing of how her record in terms of like sentencing of child pornographers and all of that and yada, 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 it's bullshit. She has sentenced them just about the same as any other federal judge. But those are such amazing talking points, specifically for boomers, that I'm afraid that by telling people to watch it and be more informed, they're just going to become less informed. But I also know that, like, if you're going to believe that, you're probably too far gone anyway. So I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle. I don't know.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for your opening statements. We're going to go ahead and open up the panel now to everybody. Anyone can feel free to address anyone else's points. Yeah, be civil, but you can be contentious.
Yeah, so all of you are dumb as I'm kidding.
Yo, I was gonna say the same shit, yeah.
Yeah. No. So I think Tiberius, was it you that was saying that like there's not much of a point to them watching? Or like, yeah, I just want to get a clarification so I'm not putting words in your mouth.
Yeah, for me personally, and this is maybe just a bit of a morals values kind of difference here, is that I've got so much time in my day, right? And when it comes to this, is that is there certain points here that you can see what your party representatives are asking this nominee? Of course. Is that important? Sure. But on the other side of that, is that actually what's going to matter a week from now, 3 weeks from now, a month from now, a year from now? No, this nominee is probably going to be confirmed, and that's going to be the end of the story. So for me, as more of a functional kind of person, I just don't really care that much. I expect that the Republicans are going to throw a bunch of tissies about why this person's a nominee and why they don't agree with it or what have you. And the Democrats are going to be like, can you explain to me what your thoughts are on this? Or they're just going to go, good. I think this is kind of just a formality at this point. And there's something that actually disgusts me in how politically polarized the nominees have become. It's not healthy for the country, but what is watching it going to do to make any kind of constructive change besides maybe, just maybe, change who you're going to vote for in the next election?
I suppose that like that's a question that you can ask about basically functionally anything that we do ever.
True.
Like, yeah, like sure, it's not going to matter like a month from now, but like, I mean, the amount that we were talking about Afghanistan in August and how I haven't heard diddly do squat ever since. I mean, yeah, do we ever talk about anything for very long? But I suppose there's still some form of general net good that comes out of at least keeping informed and something that's
I'm sorry,
a bit more objective.
Can you define? Sorry.
I actually want to just like hit one note on this one, is that there's a level where, yeah, like we're probably never going to talk about Afghanistan ever again. But I mean, Kat, we're from Twitch politics. Like we recycle bullshit all the time. Like, I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that Destiny had been kicked off, like weren't we due for the inward discourse again? Like, I mean, we recycle this crap all the time.
Well, can I jump in here? And I just want to say, I actually concur with Tiberius, and there's a reason why there's actual negative utility in viewing it, because you actually need to go, unless you're going and studying these things contextually, it actively is spreading misinformation and misunderstanding of the judicial process, and fundamentally mischaracterizing what not only what her positions are, but mischaracterizing what judges do themselves. And if you walk away without, like, if you don't do your research and you don't have the context going into it, the Republicans play a really good optics game. You start to wonder these things. You start to ask questions about, like, why does she do this? And you know, like I said, like Booker said in the hearing, right? He didn't come with a chart. He was uncharted, right? But everybody's going to remember the chart that Ted Cruz brought, right? And that's the problem, is the active spread of misinformation that is the thing that's tearing us apart, like fundamentally at the core, right?
So I'm going to disagree with you, Aston.
You motherfucker.
So I disagree with you because I think behavior matters. I think really seeing how certain senators are acting really matters. Like I would agree with you, Tiberius, if everyone was acting formal, if everyone was acting like, like I disagree because X and Y. But Ted Cruz literally brought a whole ass poster with a children's book called The Anti-Racist Baby, started flipping through pages and showed Jackson and was like, do you agree with this book? And Jackson's like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, what does this have to do with literally anything?
Have you ever read
Well,
the Rye?
I have a question. Like, I have to push back against that because, like, as Like I can see why it would be a totally interesting like case study and crazy to watch Ted Cruz continue on like this. Like who is going to have their mind changed by them, right? The people who are tuning in and like viewing
that. I can answer that. Sorry to interrupt you. I can answer that. And I would like to almost disagree with everybody, but I feel like I'm not. I think, and this is me thinking a step ahead, so I'm kind of cheating with my answer here. But if you see how like Twitter clips, like we see these outrageous Twitter clips, and that's actually the Senate hearing. Like there is no the summary. If you watched all, I don't know how long it went for, like 3-4 hours, blah blah blah. Like the Twitter clips are the full Senate hearing. I feel like maybe that's our job now, like to dissect that. But I disagree because I feel like it's not being broadcast in the areas where the stupid people are asking the questions. Like nobody from, okay, let me get this right. Senator from Texas, Ted Cruz, got it. Okay. Nobody from Texas is watching that to think about flipping the seat. The only people who are thinking about flipping the seat, who are watching it, are the people who are actively already trying to flip the seat. I feel like the issue or the disconnect becomes where we don't do our due diligence to say, hey, this is your senator. This is what he cares about. Is anything of what he said just now important to you at all? No? Then why is he still sitting there? Like, I feel like we have to start making cases, building cases against these people to say, yo, like, I don't have to run a campaign to show you like, oh, I'm a better governor or I'm a better senator than this person. Look at what they say. Given all just straight optics, given just a room full of them, he pulled out a children's book and wants to use that as judgment of a Supreme Court. Like at some point, somebody, I don't care if you're 50, 60, 70 years old,
it's not for actual judgment. It's for political posturing. Like there's no way that he's going to say, no, I'm not going to confirm her because she didn't tell me what a woman was and whether or not a woman was a chair. It's just a time for him.
The flip back on that would then be, who's going to ask him, so then why did you bring it up in the first place? I'm telling you, we can end racism by just asking, what do you mean by that?
But I guess the point is like how are you going to get, like, if people are going to believe that, I don't feel like there is anything you could say to them that hasn't already been said. Like we watched what happened on January 6th. And people still support them.
Don't say it, then show them.
So I think here's a key issue, and I think that it has a little bit to do with the question itself. That's right, I'm calling out. That's right. I take heads. I'm going after the host himself. Okay. No. But really, it's the word "you." Should you watch it? Who is you? Because there are different audiences here. If we're talking about the normie audience, like the ones that aren't politically engaged, that's the audience that I'm saying this is a lot of misinformation that may steer them in the wrong way. And I think that we have that issue. If you are a Democrat or you're a Twitch streamer or you're politically active, yeah, you should probably watch it so you can get like some lessons in political theater, right? And maybe make some delineations on how to like take their political messaging and spread it to your audience, or maybe this makes a decision for you on like, you can watch this and you can find clips of Ted Cruz and now you can campaign against him, or you can find clips of Ted Cruz and now you can campaign for him. But I think that the word "you" is too widely spread, because I do think that this thing varies in importance depending on the audience that we're talking about. For normies, and this is where my argument's going to stay, I don't think that normies should really watch it, because I really do think that the amount of contextual information that you need to be able to digest this in a healthy way is more than the effort that a normie is going to put in. That's just my take.
Yeah,
ambiguity
I'm
leads to the
mostly
best
watching
conversations.
I'm mostly watching it to have something to tell my mom to post on Facebook. So when her crazy boomer friends, are like, oh, she supports child predators. I can be like, no, 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 here, post this. But yeah, no, I agree that.
Well, so the reality is, Aston, that these people are already getting this information. Like they might not be watching it, but they're getting headlines. They're learning that,
Right.
you know, Lindsey Graham is having a meltdown, like in front of Jackson. I think there's an importance to saying there's a difference between hearing about it and actually seeing it. Because if you're hearing about it, you get, well, they were really taking it to her on, you know, her like the Hawkins case. But when you actually see it, you realize, oh, this isn't professional or actually taking it to him at all. You get a difference. And so, like, I have a question for Tiberius.
I disagree. I actually disagree with you wholly. I think that the normie audience doesn't have that perspective that you have, and that they don't have that same the same viewpoints. Like when they watch that, I think they will see
Well,
it.
I believe in the normies.
I don't.
I believe.
70. Hey, listen,
Give it a
70
couple
million votes for Trump.
won't.
I don't believe in them. Sorry.
Fair enough. So Tiberius, I have a question for you.
What's up about it?
So I like just to kind of keep going on the formality thing.
Mhm.
Are we just kind of all gonna? I kind of feel like to me like we're all just kind of accepting like, yeah, we know it's a circus tent in there,
Mhm.
so it's okay as long as we all know it. But I feel like at what point do we want it to not be like a circus inside of
I
there?
don't, oh, well, I'll let him answer since that's who you directed it to.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So, like, to actually answer the original question that you shot off at me about 5 minutes ago, is that when do you not expect someone like Ted Cruz to walk into any building and not like act like a jackass? There's a point here where, like, I look at Washington just across the board, and I'm like, this is a three-ring circus, and it's not constructive at all. Like the state of our politics baffles me, and it makes me very unhappy. Now, some people might be even on this panel will be like, hey, why don't you vote Democrat, or why do you vote the way you vote, or what have you? I'm not impressed with either party in any regards. A lot of this is just blatant like virtue signaling, and from the right or the left, about, hey, this is our morals and this is what we believe in, and that's great and all, but like when it comes to policy, for me, which is something I actually care about more, one party is the party of no ideas and the other party is the party of bad ideas. I'm not really interested in either one of them, and that's just really what it comes down to for me.
Kat, did you want to jump back in?
Yeah, I was just going to say that this wasn't like always that way. So I do think it's important maybe for people that have been checked out of politics for a while to take the opportunity to look at this, because I'm seeing, I guess I don't want to go too far into future topics, but when I was watching all of some of the VODs of old ones, I was like, this is a very spectacular change from the way that these hearings used to go. So I think perhaps it is important for people to watch it non-apathetically, because I don't think it's normal the way that this is going. And like I even went as far back as Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I was like, yo, this is a fucking cakewalk. They were just basically giving her a pat on the ass and saying good job in comparison to like what they're doing right now. So I think that like even if it's clearly like irritating and that this is all just a big elaborate gesture, and at the end of the day whatever like is going to happen is going to happen, I think it is important that we just kind of keep an eye out so that we can say that like things within our political system have actually been shifting, because I know people are like, oh, we were so much more divided than we've ever been. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know, like it seems like the internet just exasperates that. But at least when it comes to this is like a tangible difference in the way that these hearings have been going over the last 10 years.
Yeah, but unfortunately, like, people aren't like us. They're not going to go watch like old Supreme Court nomination hearings because they're boring, because they weren't like this. So I agree. Like, it would be super interesting to do a side by side and be like, we're going to watch one from like the 1980s, and now we're going to watch one from like now and see how things have changed. Unfortunately, I just don't see people doing that. I also don't see this getting better. And I don't know if maybe I'm just like full of like cynicism and sarcasm now. But yeah, at some point in time, you just have to sit, like, kind of, at least when it comes to like the uninformed people watching it or normies watching it, You just kind of have to say, like, it's actually doing more harm than good at this point in time. And maybe, you know, touch grass and go talk to those normies as a more informed
But
person.
that's the big disconnect. Is like, I know Aston started this whole thread, but like, who's the audience? And my problem is that these have like real world impactful meanings to what these normies want. Like, this is where it is, and this is where all the problems are occurring from. And I don't know how to translate that into please watch C-SPAN for 6 hours a day, because as Tiberius said, I got shit to do. Like, I would rather spend my time, okay, I guess I'm having my opinion changed here. I'd rather spend my time gathering information on something that I could have tangible effects upon, as opposed to like, okay, I get that they're bad, but then what? That follow-up is where we really get into the whole like right-winger, the echo chamber, the rabbit hole. Like, okay, I'm gonna look up, he said something about she made a mistake and excused a sex offender. Like, okay, so let me go look up how that actually happened. And you're only going to find out like what you want. And then what if there's a news source that says, yeah, and 6 other people that were around her did the same thing. So it is true. The cabal is real. And it's like, damn, but that's not what I wanted your takeaway to be. If we could give people responsible tools to watch these things and say, this is what you should be analyzing, then you can make a game of it. You can have it fun. But nobody's sitting at home on a, wait, maybe not nobody, I shouldn't say that, because maybe we would do that. Like, let's have a drinking game. Every time you hear some dumb shit that got nothing to do with anything you care about, take a shot. And like half the nation would be plasma. Yeah, right.
Don't want to die.
Yeah, can I just say, this is my biggest takeaway. And I think this is important. Everybody here? Everybody good? Are we all good? Listen up. I do not like that man, Ted Cruz. I do not like his shitty views. I do not like him in this hearing. His control of the discourse is something we should be fearing. I don't like it when he does his little political dance. I hope Ted Cruz shits his pants. There. Done.
Okay.
That's what I took away from this whole hearing. Okay. And I think that's all there really is to it, because I think the reality is like you said, I think that what it is it's incumbent on us that are streamers, us that are trying to get, dissect this information and make it palatable for the normies. Yeah, we should watch it so that we can dissect and explain exactly what's going on. I think that it's I think when we sit here and we analyze things, when we look at, okay, what are the Republicans actually attacking? Like, let's talk about the pedophilia. Let's talk about the cases. Let's talk about the roles of judges. But that's our job as pseudo political experts, right? As the people that are supposed to be the people that actually get into that. I just don't see normies, like, unless you're crazy like me, back before I used to stream, like, I don't see the value of it for normies, because I just do not like that man, Ted Cruz. Like,
I'm sorry, I just don't agree with like what feels like this like this entertainment Leninism, like we're like, we'll be the ones to teach all the normies what to get from this. Like, it's one thing like if somebody finds you entertaining and wants to get from it, but I think, like, for example, there's things you can learn from watching the hearings. Like, you can learn that Lindsey Graham might be insane. Might be literally insane.
Like, the normies are like that. They like that he's insane. They like that he stormed out. They do so like that man, Ted Cruz.
These are elected officials that get millions of views.
Love.
Of course people like them. Like, come on, that's why they're in these positions. So for us to, like, what I don't like is us pretending like America is something that it's not. Like, our population is something that it's not. Ted Cruz gets voted in year after year after fucking year. He went to fucking Cancun while his entire state blacked out, and it wasn't even a drop in the bucket for it. Was just a Tuesday for him, right? So when we do these things and we come to our conclusions based upon what we're seeing, we forget that we're using our context, our bias, our political understanding to come to those conclusions. They don't have that same perspective. And unless it'd be like me handing a bunch of, Kat understands this, how many physics papers could you hand out to normies and they'd get it? How many physics lectures could they watch?
You're overcomplicating. It's not the same as like an academic paper, like an academic study.
Hold on, everyone. So if we are, I want everyone to, if you have a closing statement, go ahead and kind of just like try to like chime in with it now, because we're going to switch topics here in a minute. I also want to say to Tiberius's point earlier, Ted Cruz was recently in Montana, state that I reside in currently, and he got thrown out of a local airport for causing a fuss. So
Yeah, I
yes,
saw that.
Can I just push
people
back
do have
on,
issues with him everywhere.
Can I just push back really quick on what Fluff
On
said?
Ted Cruz being in an airport?
No.
Go ahead.
Like, this is incredibly complicated. That's the problem, right? Like the questions, like the actual underlying concepts behind these questions, like federal sentencing guidelines and jurisprudence and like legal theories and how do you interpret the law, those are incredibly complex and there are a multitude of ways to answer them. So it is kind of like trying to pass out, like if you're being in good faith, it is kind of like trying to pass out an academic paper to people, to normies, and expect them to understand it, but also at the same time have Ted Cruz, acting like a jackass, tap dancing in a, like on the Senate floor. So I just had to push back against that. As someone who studied it, that shit's really fucking hard.
Anybody else have something that they have to get out before we change to the next topic?
Are we doing final statements?
Not formally, kind of informally.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to say that, yeah, I think it's a little bit, I guess a little bit patronizing, I suppose, to think that like every non-politically involved person expects, like, if the political things don't look like an episode of Love Island and they're voting people off, like no one's gonna watch it. Like, not everything needs to be like super, super entertaining. I think a lot of people are just either apathetic or some people are just like so incredibly like content, like, I don't know, libs, they're just like, wow, a Black woman, I'm so happy. And then they go out for brunch and they talk about it over mimosas and then they go to bed. But perhaps they should see like what actually happens like during the course of that. Or, maybe people that are conservative should sit there and be like, wow, I'm so happy he really hit her with the hard-hitting questions, such as, "Our baby's racist?" or whatever. I mean, I don't really care in a particular way whether or not it benefits my particular agenda. If the average person were to watch, because I think it's more important that you have an informed populace rather than a populace that is a socialist populace, because I understand in America that ain't gonna happen. So yeah, I think it's just perhaps we should more like lightly encourage people to do their own thing, because it's not our jobs to like grab information and pass it down, because that's how sometimes I walk around being like, actually, did you know that my favorite YouTuber said X, Y, and Z? And somebody's like, what are you talking about? That's not true. I'm like, oops, so like we should encourage people to do their own research, but not in a conspiratorial way. Just watch an objective hearing for a couple of hours.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and move to our next topic.
I
Do appreciate.
I thought I got a final say.
Oh, okay. All right, come on in.
Okay, so this is my final statement, right? So this is the thing, right? For every Carl Sagan out there, there's an Eric Weinstein and an Elon Musk. Okay, like the problem is what we're not. If this was just information that was just readily accessible, that people could just digest and understand, I'm not against an informed populace, but you have to understand that there are active agents that are doing the misinformation, taking the things that they know that people don't understand and purposely manipulating them in ways to present ideas. If I need to know that 70% of judges actually have lower sentencing for cases of pedophilia and things like that, to go into this, like if that's knowledge I need to know to contextualize what's going on in front of me, I think that is a little bit of a that's a little bit of a jump. That's a little bit of a leap. If I need to know that judges, like what a judge actually, that a judge, like how many cases that she's tried, if I need to know that, what her position, like if I need to know all of this information going in to be able to understand that I am being lied to, then I think that's a problem. And I think the biggest problem that we have right now is Republicans are incredibly good at propaganda and misinformation spreading. And it is like a virus. It's a thought virus. And we do need to take active steps against that. Now, this isn't me saying you shouldn't watch this, Normie. This isn't for you. No, watch it. If you're interested, watch it. Be critical. I
Gatekeeping
always
head
suggest
ass.
those things. But on the flip side of that, would I sit down and say it's something that is worthwhile if every single house in the country was viewing it? Do I think that it would be a net good for the country? Absolutely not, because I think everybody would get bad ideas because of the lack of context, the lack of information, the lack of the active actors that are manipulating the information in a way to lie to you. It's why everybody thinks Elon Musk is some crazy physicist when in reality he's done nothing ever, literally ever. He's not done anything ever. Like invented a single thing, made anything successful. Every single one of his projects fails. But when you watch him on Joe Rogan, it sure sounds like he's smart, right?
Well, that's also because he's talking to Joe Rogan.
Yeah,
My
that's
closing
true.
statement will be my closing argument on that will be nuh-uh. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Damn, he got
All right.
me.
So we're going to go ahead and go to the next topic here. And it is as simple as this. Should the Supreme Court be a lifetime appointment? I'm going to keep it really brief. For me, the answer is no, but I'm going to start again with paradigm shift. I want to get your opinion on this first. Should the Supreme Court be a lifetime appointment?
No, but here's the reason why. Now, this is going to get re-echoed in like every single conversation we're ever going to have about the government. When you are talking about law of the land, and I want to bring back the abortion argument yet again, and this is going to get real meta real quick. I apologize. But as a society, as humans, turn my mic up. Am I quiet? No? Oh, okay. Then it must be on my stream. As far as the alpha collective that we are as humanity, society will eventually progress to a point where if we have people who have been sitting there their entire lives, they don't have the time, energy, the breath, the mind width to understand like things change. People's needs change. It's always about precedent. It's always about this case, this court case lays down on this court case. And if we were to break the precedents, it all gets ruined. Like, no, like there women can speak more now. So maybe we should tailor our Supreme Court I was going to say appearances. we should tailor our Supreme Court to change with the times as well. So people who go through the struggles in this world can say, hey, normally we'd rule like this, but it's 2149. Like that doesn't really matter anymore. Let's get a brand new clean slate for this event or this issue that came up to our court. So my answer is no. Old people, bad.
Somebody needs to clip that.
Okay. Tiberius, you're next.
Yeah, so I'm largely against this, and I've got my good friend Pisco in my chat, which I've had many good conversations with him about this. But the long and the short is, while I do respect the idea that basically once you're in, you get to kind of be as bipartisan as you desire or as partisan as you desire, giving basically anybody that blank check bothers me a little bit. There's some evidence to say that it actually has done some good. Justice Roberts has absolutely shown that he's willing to go wherever the hell he wants, and he suffers no repercussions for it from any kind of electorate. But that bothers me actually a lot. Is that I believe in republicanism, and that while the Supreme Court is basically put up by our Republican representatives, and when I say Republican, I mean by the Republic. I like that, but it needs to have a check. And the problem is the only check that you have on a Supreme Court justice is an impeachment. And we've seen how much that is a joke. I have no problem if they want to do multiple terms, but for me, it's like 10 years tops. You need to you need to go through the cycle, and you need to have our elected representatives be able to be like, all right, you're still fit for office. We still like you, go. Versus, hey, you know what? The political winds have changed, or more importantly, you're too fucking old. You need to retire. We don't need to have another Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We don't need to have another. Just literally, they all die in office anymore. They very seldomly ever retire. And if you're literally getting to the point where you're dying in office, you're in office too damn long, in my opinion. I'm not even saying that to be ageist. It's just get a lifetime's appointments just don't make sense to me. They really don't. Sorry.
Okay. And next, we're going to go over to Katarana.
Yeah, I also don't think it should be a lifetime appointment, but I'm also thinking that perhaps it should be like a system where you more like have to get renewed, but to make sure that yeah, it doesn't essentially just flip every time there's a new president. Supreme Court, I would think that it would have to be like within 10 to 15 years, and ideally it would be by a president of your own party. That basically reviews and says like, okay, yeah, like, no, you suck, KK, bye. But I also think at the same time, it would also lead people to like feel like they need to toe party lines. So it gets pretty difficult. But yeah, it's kind of, I'm going to be annoying and be somewhat centrist because I understand the utility of the lifetime appointment, but I also think that like even with lifetime appointments, we've also seen that people aren't always entirely impartial. I mean, right now, aren't they like checking Clarence Thomas and thinking about the process of impeachment? Maybe if it's true that like his wife is very QAnon-y. So I don't know. It's rough out here.
All right. And next up to Fluff.
I really like I think the goal of lifetime appointments, right, is to try and make Supreme Court justices as objective as possible. It's the idea like that, oh, it'll make them objective. Well, clearly it doesn't really work. And I also think most people arguably don't. I think if you think there's such a thing as being objective, like especially when it comes to interpretation of the Constitution, you're gonna sound like Scalia, where you think that you argue that you're being objective when you're really not. So I think no, because you just get like once you get to a certain age, like your cognitive faculties just get a little much. Like you start getting a little lazy. Like things starting to get there, and I don't think that's an ageist thing to say, just to be a little scientific. I also just don't think. I think like, well, what sort of standards are we setting? Like, you don't have to keep up to a certain standard as a Supreme Court justice because you're done. Like, and we have evidence of that. Like with Clarence Thomas, apparently he's never written like he hasn't written any of dissents, like if at all. He 100% has clerks do it and make it up completely. Like he doesn't actually chime in often on his own things. And so like that might not be totally the case, but like, do we want Supreme Court justices that actually like do their job and care about it? Well, how are they going to do that if they just get in for life and can do whatever they want at that point?
Okay. And next over to Aston Mac.
Yo, okay. So there's going to be some controversy here because there's good and bad. I think that first we have to examine what is the point of the Supreme Court and what is it that we're trying to do and what is it that we want to see. I think that's more important for then describing what rules that we would have dictate the Supreme Court, right? I think Tiberius was the one that jumped in and said that he believes in a republic. And I think that he's absolutely right. There's parts of this that are issues like, why do we only have 7 Supreme Court justices? Our population is literally like an order of magnitude larger than it was before, right? Or 9, sorry, did I say 7? I apologize. It was changed to 7 at one. It doesn't matter. We can get into the history some other time. But the point is we have to ask ourselves, our population is like changed by an order of magnitude. Why do we only have the 9? Like what do we want to see? Do we want the Supreme Court to be representative of the populace? Do we want it to be representative of the parties? Do we want it to be like there are different questions here. Now, as far as the age thing, I do think it's a little ageist to kind of condemn people because of their age. You can give them a cognitive test and plenty of old people will like literally walk circles around us in cognitive tests. That's just the truth. Like it isn't evenly distributed that universally always cognitive functions decline. Now, do they decline often? Yeah, enough for us to say that we should have a test, but we should do that like for everyone, not just old people, right? And then further, there's some utility to age. What about all the people that saw like World War II happening, or the rise of Nazi Germany, or all the things that we have tried so hard to erase as society or manipulate the information for? We actually have witnesses to the greatest events in society, and there is utility in their direct personal lived experience and giving that direct personal lived experience to younger generations. Now, that's not me saying that I'm some sort of like traditionalist. I believe that everybody should, I think that we should probably have limits. Honestly, if I was going to make the rules, I would have limits. I'd probably make them pretty long though. I would probably do maybe instead of having it be really long, maybe it'd be something like 10 years and then you can get reappointed like infinitely, right? So if they wanted to reappoint you, they could, or they could change you out if that president says so. I think the larger issue though that we're dealing with in the Supreme Court is not one of age though. It's the one of the number. Like, it's too easy to unbalance the Supreme Court. It is too few justices, right? And there is no way in hell in a world where I now have trans representation, where I have LGBTQ representation, where I have, like, this is literally our first ever Black woman. Like, that's how few people. So how is it that these 9 people represent the crazy intersectionality, the crazy diversity that's supposed to be our modern republic? And that's where the issue is, because it's too easy for one side to go, all right, I can, like, Trump elected 3. Like, that's literally a third of the Supreme Court by one guy. That doesn't make any sense to me. So that's where I would actually lean the question to, and that's where I'm going to leave it.
All right. And finally, over to Rootsie.
This might be a hot take. Well, the first part won't be. No, I don't think they should be appointed for life. When it comes to what do we want the justices to represent? I would say unequivocally, we do not want them to represent the populace. It's more of a legal theory question in terms of where does the law come from? Some of it from society, some of it from our collective knowledge. Nobody really knows, but the point of having a Supreme Court is to be isolated from the whims of the populace, because there are some things that are too important to be up for a vote. The problem is we're super partisan, and it's showing in our court. It showed in 1989 when Antonin Scalia dissented in Lawrence v. Texas, which was the case that literally legalized sodomy. And that motherfucker was still saying no in 1989. So, like, everyone is partisan. You're right. When the Constitution was written, the average lifespan was 50. It's 80 now. I don't think that an 80-year-old is down with the latest science or the latest influence on where to draw from to interpret the law. But where they should be drawing from, I don't think is necessarily the electorate.
Okay. So before we go to the open panel here, I actually want to pose a question to the entire panel, because it seems as though everyone's in agreement that it should not be a lifetime appointment. So here's another question I want to ask everyone. Should the people directly elect a Supreme Court justice versus them being appointed by the president and the Senate confirming them? So for instance, here in my town of Missoula, we just had 3 municipal judges get elected in the last couple of months. That was done by the people. The people voted. We have 3 new judges now. Should that type of a system be brought to the Supreme Court? Is it a good idea, a bad idea? I want to hear some of your thoughts on it.
No, I don't think so.
Tell me why.
We already do that. We already do it at the state level. State judges and local judges are elected. And before anything gets to the Supreme Court, almost everything has to go through them first. There are some cases that start out in federal court. There are some very rare cases where the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction, but most of them, I would say the vast majority of them, begin at the state court where the judges are elected.
Well, you just explained what happens, but I'm asking, why shouldn't the people have direct control over it?
Because the people already do, right? So, like, they get their say at the state court, and if the state judges are like, nah, or the lawyers are like, I don't think that's right, they get their chance to take it, turn it into they're rid of the thing that I can never pronounce, right? Certiorari, I don't know. It starts with a C. It's hard to pronounce. And then they get to take it to the federal court, where you don't have the politics. Like whatever we do with the Supreme Court, it should not be like whether we say like you're 10 years and out, you know, it should still be a nomination, not an election.
I'm sorry, but Supreme Court justices are picked pretty politically. Like they're literally they're picked for their politics by the acting president. So
yes, but that's not how it's supposed to be.
Wait, no. I gotta disagree with that, because you say that's not how it's supposed to be, but that's how it's always been historically, starting with the very first Supreme Court in 1789.
Right.
So like they literally added, when we were at 5, they added 6, and then they took one away because they didn't want Jefferson to appoint one. And when we added some in like the 1800s, I think it was like the late 1860s, 70s. Again, it's always political. It has never not been political.
It is. You are correct, but the point of that is that the original intent of the lifetime appointment was that then once they're on, right? And they don't have to play the politics. So they might have to play the politics to get their first confirmation to whatever federal court they start at, or their, the Supreme Court or whatever. But then once they're on, no more politics. So to take I would say to take it directly to the electorate would just make them even more partisan.
I just disagree. I think
Kat, go ahead and jump in.
Selected because they're so Kat, let Kat go because she's had her hand up, and then I'll come back because I don't want to be rude and interrupt. We're a loving panel here.
Fuck you, I don't love you. No, I'm just kidding.
Too bad because I love you. Too bad because I love you, and you can't stop me.
Yo, the way you said that
a bit creepy. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So I don't think it should be voted on. So nonetheless, like, even though I may not politically agree with basically anyone that was put onto the Supreme Court from the last presidency, at least I knew that everybody that was put there was a qualified person. I think so far we know that like the American populace would vote for mayonnaise. I think they'd vote for literally anything.
Harambe in 2016.
Yeah,
ranch dressing over mayonnaise every day.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're all disgusting for saying any liquids belong on food, but like anyways, so what I was gonna, nonetheless, I think that like if the American populace got to choose who's going to be the next person on the Supreme Court, I don't think that at least like the amount of vetting in terms of qualifications would be gone through. It would be basically not people choosing their appointee based off of the judgments that they've made so far. People would choose the appointees based off of what the potential appointees say that they will do. Yeah, vote for me and I will overturn Roe versus Wade. Also, I think that like there's just too much. I think American people or people in general are for some reason like impressed by some like a inch or ounce of charisma, and I don't think that's really something that like I need from my Supreme Court justice, because I feel like if we lived in TV, people would vote for Saul Goodman every time for like a Supreme Court justice, and I just don't think that's what we need. I may not like a lot of people, but at least I can say they know how to do their job.
No. Paradigm. I was next.
My bad.
Sit down. So like I was saying, so this is the issue that I have right now, because you guys have an extreme scorn, it sounds like, for the common populace. First thing I want to say is, when we say old people, I want to note that Leonard Susskind is 81 and he's on the bleeding edge of astrophysics right now. Like he is the father of string theory, and he's working on it today, right now, at 81. So let's not do the whole ages. Every single person that's old will magically lose all their brains out of their head. Does it happen? Yeah, sure. And it happens all the time. Cognitive tests. But let's not pretend like there aren't plenty of old people that can literally think circles around us. Okay.
Okay, but my problem with you, Aston, is that you're giving me an example of somebody who's very, very educated, articulate, and understands their field. Why doesn't that person join politics? Because they don't want to, right? Father there's string theory, right? Why? What? Where are the old people doing the choices on black people?
Let me finish. Let me finish, because there are older politicians, but again, I think that it's our political system that creates these outcomes, not necessarily their fucking age. It has to do with the fact that it's the political capital and how it's gained and lost. The second part that I kind of want to go into, as far as we're talking about like allowing people to vote, I'm not saying that I don't necessarily think that we should have a direct vote because of certain things, but to pretend like our judges are somehow more qualified than judges that the American people would pick is like insane to me, because when you look at the qualifications of the individual judges, they're all the fuck over the place. There's no all it is that they're judges. That's literally the one thing that combines them all. I mean, whether or not they've served on district courts, whether or not they have an Ivy League law degree, whether or not they have sat on sentencing things, whether they've been public defenders, these are all things that are randomly distributed among them. We don't have a system of qualifications, honestly, and you can see that reflected. That's why I point out Ketanji being the most qualified, because she's literally like the only person that you can sit down and ask, like, have you done this? And she checks literally every single one of the boxes.
Okay, I have to put
Hold on, everyone. Hold on. I haven't heard from Tiberius or Fluff yet. I would like to have them jump in once Ast is done.
Okay, so I want to point out that, like, when you say qualifications, I don't necessarily think that any of the judges were picked because we thought that they were going to rule in specific ways on specific cases. That is exactly why they were picked by the political parties that picked them. That's why they were handed lists of judges that they could approve of because of their political agenda. Because, like, for example, with Roe v. Wade, yeah, that's going to probably get overturned. And Trump did that on purpose. He did that because he guessed that they would do this. So when we say that we're not voting for specific rulings, I think that that's like crazy not true. And I think that it's okay for us to say things like maybe the public would vote for things that are maybe a little frivolous for to be a Supreme Court judge. I think that's a fair statement, but I don't think our political machine is any better at that. Like, that's not, I don't see that as fair. But I will say what I do think would be more effective would be a jury of their peers. I think that other lawyers and judges should have overwhelming more weight on the decision for who becomes the Supreme Court justice. Just like I think scientists should be the ones to run science, I think lawyers and judges should have overwhelming more authority. Maybe there's a new type of voting system that we can come up with where we give them some sort of say, because the reality is
technocracy. What's called technocracy?
How's that a technocracy?
It's based on like people's expertise have like more say in how the government works. It's just
not a meritocracy.
No. Specifically, and I want to be clear, specifically within their specific field. So it'd be like a lawyer getting to vote on who's king of the lawyers. Like, that's what I'm saying. And but I think that has more value. And if you're looking for people that would actually understand the context, actually put more weight on the actual qualifications of what makes a good judge, I think that's the group to pull from is if we're trying to get different opinions. But I just don't think that like us labeling the way that the system works right now as some sort of like, we're not divining good judges. We're just picking ones that we think will agree with us.
Tiberius, I want to hear you jump in here. What are your thoughts on this whole idea of the people being able to directly elect Supreme Court judges?
Yeah, I actually really did want to get on this one. Number one is I hate it. and this well, long story short, like this is actually one of the biggest reasons why I am a Republican. And when I say Republican, not a supporter of the Republican Party, but actually believe in Republicanism. And that is, I want a political, like, if you will, like aristocracy or a political class that devotes themselves to this being their full-time job. Because knowing who is qualified to take on certain positions, knowing what the Abrams tanks is shooting a 105 or a 122 millimeter Doombringer, knowing all of these things that our congressmen and our elected representatives are asked to do, from housing to welfare to defense to all this shit, it's a lot to know. And it is a full-time job into itself. And so when when it comes to something even on the state level where people are like, hey, or should we vote for our judges in this? I never hear anyone talk about it. And I'm in a more Republican state, in a more conservative state. Like, we'll talk about our representatives, we'll talk about the guy who's running for like county clerk, but I never, and I mean, I have never heard anyone talk about or even run campaigns for reelect this judge or hit this judge. The only times that I've even seen it in any kind of like media is when a judge has pissed off like 99% of their constituency, and there's actually a campaign to get them voted out. But it's super rare. So overall is that one, the average person has no idea who most of these people are, whether it's on the Supreme Court or the appeals court or even their own state courts. They have like 99% don't know who they are. Number two is they don't know if they're even remotely qualified. And number three is even if they knew half of that, are they going to make up for the fact that all the other people don't know? So this is just one of those things that I firmly believe should be left up to the people whose job it is to know. Whether it is partisan or not, that's a whole other conversation, which I do want to hit. Side note, is old being wiser? Well, I think we all can agree that there's a level where like dinosaur kind of vibes get triggered for a lot of people. I talk to my grandparents and it's just like, dude, do you understand what's going on in the world right now? Granted, they're all, over 75. There's a level where they've been through a few things, they know a few things, and while I have no love for the boomers as a pejorative whole, is there is a role to be played with those who are older, kind of not necessarily taking the reins, but being there as a check between the younger people, because maybe they tried it before. And that's actually one of the big reasons why I'm a little bit more like right-wing, is that I have no problem with progressivism trying to like make the world a better place. But if it's been tried before and it didn't work out very well, or, we've been talking about the same thing since the 60s, I'm absolutely in favor of putting the brakes on. So I've got more to say, but I'm going to pass it off to Fluff.
Thank you. You actually made a better argument, I think, about the age thing than I had thought in my head. So I like that. Good job. My main issue is that, like, I really don't care about the age thing a whole lot, to be honest. I care more about it because of the life thing. And to really quick touch on like what you asked about the voting, I think we already do that. A lot of people vote president. Like, if you listen around to why people voted for Biden, a lot of them were talking about it because they were worried about Roe v. Wade being overturned. Like the president, like it's kind of like the president's now considered a package deal with Supreme Court justices. I think the real issue is, for me, that we have like Supreme Court justices, for example, now that are still serving, that voted for like Citizens United. Like, we have like Supreme Court justices don't get kicked off when they make absolutely atrocious, like really, really detrimental like decisions. Like the Dred Scott case, no Supreme Court justice got kicked off for doing that. Buck v. Vell, where they literally said eugenics is fine if we think you're dumb enough, which was never overturned. Or when Korematsu versus the United States, where they're like interning all of the Japanese people in America because we think they might be a little sussy, is perfectly fine. And Plessy versus Ferguson, like all of these things, all these Supreme Court justices stayed on, the ones that like enacted it. And there was there's nothing you could do about it. And like Tiberius said, the impeachment process is virtually non-existent and a joke for Supreme Court justices. But like, so we have these mega, like really like just honestly, just they kind of show their colors when something this important comes up, like when a very important decision comes up that really show like who they are at their core, like just how like detrimental they can be for the United States, and there's no recourse.
Yeah, I think that goes, I'm sorry, I've been holding my breath because I didn't want to interrupt. It goes back to the string theory thing that we were talking about, and like the very unique nature of what is the law and what is the role of a judge in our legal system, right? So I am by no means a math person. The thought of like string theory gives me hives, but I do know enough that like 1 + 1 today is the same that it was like 5,000 years ago, right?
I would hope so.
I know that much, right? The law is this kind of like ambiguous blob of like collective thought, like I said before, a bunch of things, and then we tell judges to interpret it. So there is like some sense, and Fluff spoke to it in terms of like the doctrine of stare decisis and being able to overturn things that you have to kind of be aware of what's going on in the world to interpret what the law is or what it should be, because, you know, things change. Segregation was thought good, then we realized it was really bad. And then the other thing I would say, Aston, to your point, that it sounds really good to say, like, oh yeah, they should be, you know, tried by a jury of their peers, by other lawyers and judges. The Senate is almost all lawyers. So I don't know if that would make that much of a difference.
I mean, I think that when I say, I mean a wider berth than just the ones that are politically active. I think that's, I mean, technically by definition, I think all judges are technically part of the political system by the definition of what they do. But you understand what I'm saying, where I just think that a wider group of people, but you're right. I don't think that there's really, honestly, my true answer is, I don't think that there's really a way to get out of the whole, like, you're going to get judges that are going to do things that you're going to disagree with vehemently, and judges that aren't qualified. Like, I don't know if there's a way really around that.
All right. Does anyone have any closing thoughts on this before we move on to the next topic?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I do. There was something that Aston said at the beginning before you came in with the second one. I'm trying to remember it. I've even asked my community, like, who was listening. It's like, hey guys, remind me what he said that I wanted to hit on.
Was it about having more judges?
I think it was. It was during that monologue, but I can't remember exactly what I wanted to peg on.
Because I think we should have more judges. Does everybody
about
think
the
we should have
fact
more
that there's not
judges?
enough representation on the courts, given how the country's been changing?
I do remember what it was. So I wanted to go actually the opposite way that you were wanting to go, in the regard that you were a concern that, like, literally Donald Trump had 3 Supreme Court nominees, right? And you're like, hey, you know, that seems like an awful lot for having this court, is that he could sway literally 1/3 of it during the presidency. I kind of actually want to take that and double into it, to where one of the big reasons I want term limits on our court, or on our Supreme Court judges, is that there's going to be a continual cycle where, yeah, you're going to get sometimes super left judges, sometimes super right judges, but the fact that you're kind of getting a kicked out the door party kind of consistently going on, is that you're going to see it move more with the political winds. And I actually think that might be better than the situation that we're in now. But that's kind of my take.
So can I comment on that? Because
Please.
I actually don't disagree with you. I think my take here is more that, like, Donald Trump got to get 3, and then the next president will get 0. Like, these are the issues that I have, that we need to, the reason, like, I agree that maybe like a 10-year or some sort of limiting sentence or some sort of reinstatement that needs to happen would be good, is exactly for that reason. Because, like, there's a disproportion of political power sometimes given by chance to specific groups. Like, Donald Trump being a 1-term president and getting to elect 3 judges is crazy, when you consider there's a good chance Biden might not get to, I mean, we're getting the 1, right? But Biden might not get another one. You know what I'm saying? And if we get a bunch of like, if we have 2 Democrats in a row, there's a chance that they might not get any. So I agree, there needs to be a better system to refresh it more regularly. I wholeheartely agree with that.
I'll add on to that as my closing thought. Like, it's a little fucked up that we're all just, like, super excited, like, just playing this weird game, like we're hoping people die. Like we all saw that with Ruth Gator Ginsburg. Where, like, people are, like, going to Ruth Gator Ginsburg and, like, listen, I need you to just live a couple more days. And she's like, you know, I'm like a human being, right?
Like, that's actually really the sad part here. And this is why I have no problem with Ginsburg. I didn't always politically agree with her on a lot of things, but when it came down to it, is that she knew that she should have retired during the Obama administration. But whether you want to say that she was just convinced that Hillary was going to win or what have you, she made a mistake. And the problem is, if we had made the reality where she has to leave at a certain point anyway, this would have been a completely different conversation. And I honestly think it's a little bit criminal in how we treat our old people in this country on a number of levels. But just literally be like, hey, you have to stay here now because the other people are going to get a pick if you die.
It'd be really mean of you to die right now.
No, I actually I want to cut the conversation right there, because that leads perfectly into our final topic, which is looking back at the last 5 appointments now, which I'm going back 5 for a specific reason. Has the whole Senate been disgracing these proceedings, or has it just been one side of the aisle? So kind of going back, starting with Merrick Garland in 2016. I'm going to start with Paradigm Shift once again. What is your thoughts on this subject? Has the whole Senate kind of been fucking up, or is it just one side in particular?
I'm gonna sound like a true lib here. I'm gonna go with, I think that the Democratic side of the aisle has been fucking up the process massively, but I feel like they do it in at least, and this is gonna go to like a personal thing that my dad has always taught me. If you're gonna fuck me, like do it with a little etiquette, you know, like don't screw me over to my face, like don't ruin my shit, like too much, like don't play me like a sucker, like at least finesse me, like, oh, that was you got me. I feel like the Republicans have just been going straight at the throat of this, like to say out loud, and this brings me back to what the turtle said, and for those who don't know who the turtle is,
McConnell?
Yeah, McConnell.
McConnell,
Am I not turtly enough for the turtle club? That's where that's coming from. It's like if somebody says out loud, I'm gonna block everything that this person's gonna do, and I'm not gonna let the Democrats pass any of the agenda. It's like at that point you're holding the whole thing hostage because you can, and that's not like. I know that Democrats have come out of their face and said some really ugly shit over the past couple years, but when it comes to the Supreme Court, it just feels like if you black or a Democrat, this game over for you. Like I'm gonna scrutinize you over the tiniest shit, like, oh, you didn't do your hair on Sunday and you proceeded over this court. What was more important? Like, bitch. So I would say as a whole, I feel like it's nice that Warnock and Ossoff give these speeches. It's nice that we hear, look, representation, this is important to us, but at the same time, there's no bite. You're letting the Republicans do what they want. So like, I'm not happy with you either. I think the entire Senate has kind of just ruined this process from top to bottom. And it's become this pissing contest between actual adults getting paid $172,000 a year, plus whatever little, they sold stock and didn't tell anybody. And at this point, and I always try to get some nuance, but like it's too black and white for me. Just ask real questions. Yeah, they've ruined this whole process. It's become this entire like children's playground where let's see if we can mess up and get and show them that we it's just so dumb. Get out of elementary school, please. I'm begging you, get out of high school. Like y'all make way too much money. You put on the suits every day. You got the right to say women have the rights to do this. You got the rights to say minorities can do this. You can fight for the country, and instead you want to talk about, do you believe in this children's book? Die. That's die. Like at this point, like die. That's my take.
Okay. All right. That will be clips later. Tiberius, you are next.
Yes. Gotta give you one.
Oh my God. All right. So is it one side of the aisle? I don't think it is. If you want an original sin here, I really want to take shots at the Republican Party here for the treatment of Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland was a qualified candidate. He was decently within reason of centrist. And you had Mitch McConnell just basically come in with big dick energy and be like, you know what, we're just going to wait until the next one because we're willing to put that on the political aisle of making that a campaign issue. Is that the next Supreme Court justice? Yeah, we think we can get our base to turn out for that. And just solely on that, we're going to make it to where the justice is not going to be confirmed. Barack Obama did his job. Whether you agree with what Merrick Garland is the nominee or not, is that he was qualified. He was relatively center, might have been center left, but he should have been confirmed. Now, granted, maybe it came back full circle for him where he's now AG. So maybe that's just for the better of him. But I do want to hold Republicans to the fire on this one, is that you made it super partisan for Supreme Court nominees. And then I don't blame the Democrats for being pissed. Gorsuch, the hearings didn't really bother me that much, but the Brett Kavanaugh hearings were just disgusting to me. And I wasn't a big fan of the way the Democrats behaved. Their base absolutely pissed me off by basically storming the atrium of Congress. Granted, it's not January 6th, but it still leaves me with a really nasty taste in my mouth to see how we treat this proceeding. Number one, I don't really think the average person really has a vetted toe in this, in the regards that they don't know what's really going on. They're just getting pissed to be pissed. But the other side of that is that when it comes to the way the parties are handling this, and particularly how they're trying to police their own base and how they're actually handling all this, they're literally throwing gasoline on a fire, and it's not okay. Like, this is actually how you tear down a democracy, not make it better. Don't get me wrong, there is significant differences between the Republican and Democratic Party. And right now it's completely rooted in moral axioms. I think we have to respect that there is rivalries, divisions, what have you. But we have to remind ourselves at the end of the day that we're family. We're part of the American family. Yes, when you fight with family, it's bloody and it's nasty and it's scary, but you still live in the same house. And that's the part where I'm upset of, but I'll end with that.
All right. And next we're going to Katarana.
You said that this is the last topic, but can I also throw in my answer for the part about whether or not Biden should have said that he was going to elect a Black woman?
Yeah, if you want to combine them, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So for the first part, for should Biden have gone and said that he was going to elect a Black woman in a vacuum, there's absolutely no problem. But, you know, like, I think it's just so like a lapse in understanding, because there's no way that people wouldn't come out of that saying, well, then this person's not going to be qualified. Oh, you're just electing them because I'm Black, because they're Black. I was watching a Jubilee video and somebody's like, there is no such thing as male privilege, because right now I wouldn't have even been considered as a Supreme Court nominee right now. Like, it's just really stupid. And I think he just had liberal moon brain when he's just like, everyone's going to be happy with Idpol. And no, but that doesn't mean that she's not qualified, but it's just unfortunate that like a lot of people will automatically think that, yeah, it's almost like a reaction people do have to affirmative action. Random people that don't deserve a spot at the table do not benefit from affirmative action, but that doesn't stop people from thinking that's true. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, I don't think he should have announced it. I think it would have been nice if it just felt more organic. And also just because I know people are going to be like, haha, she's only on because of the melanin, but yeah, whatever. Now, as for the other part, yeah, I actually went as far back as the one before Merrick Garland, because since I didn't see any hearings, I just assumed that like there wasn't anything to happen there. So I went as far back as the last person that Obama appointed, and I saw like such a very crazy juxtaposition in the way that these things used to go. And I would say that from watching the highlights from all of them, I think both sides have very clearly shown their lack of enthusiasm for the other side's appointee. But I would say that right now it seems particularly special that there's just a lot of questions that have nothing to do with nothing that are going on right now. But I suppose I saw that the way in which people would kind of indicate their disillusionment with the other appointees, at least from the Democratic side, when they have Republican potential appointees, they ask for, can we push this back, or can this be stopped? Whereas, yeah, for this one, it seemed, for other ones, it seems like it's been a lot more of theatrics, I would guess. Yeah.
All right. And next we're going to go up to Fluff.
Yeah, this is my favorite topic. I actually researched all the 5 most recent justices, but I'm going to break the rules just a little bit and go a little bit prior to that. Clarence Thomas was the replacement for Thurgood Marshall. It was appointed by George H.W. Bush. Thurgood Thomas was the first Black Supreme Court justice. Clarence Thomas was the second. And if you don't think there was any idpol in that, I don't know what to tell you. So one thing I noticed when looking at the 5 most recent justices, starting from Sonia Sotomayor, is weirdly enough, only the non-white people got accused of racism or had race being brought into the decision at all. Sonia Sotomayor was accused of being racist because of her comment about Latino women knowing more about Latino women experiences than a white person. Elena Kagan, who was an Obama appointee, got her only criticism that she got was Republicans said she was her background was more political than judicial. kind of not very similar to the criticism Sonia Sotomayor got, where every single one of her cases were looked at, or how Jackson is having every one of her cases looked at, and it's being called, and race is being constantly brought into it. Like Tiberius said, Neo Gorsh shouldn't have been in there. Doesn't really make sense. Well, kind of. I know you didn't really say that, but I think the fact that Garland was appointed 10 months before the election, the next election, but Amy Barrett was appointed 3 months or 4 months before the election, while voting was still going on for the next president. Amy Barrett was pushed in. So that's incredibly hypocritical. Brett Kavanaugh's sexual assault thing only went on for 1 day. He was only probed for a single day, and you could definitely argue that I can't remember her name. The female who spoke out got way more shit than Kavanaugh ever did. Yeah, so I think really the difference between appointees and how they're treated is their race.
Point of clarification, Amy was nominated like a month and a couple of seconds before the election date.
Yeah, it was roughly about 2 months prior to the election, because I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away in September of 2020. But anyway, over to Aston Mack next. You are muted.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, my mic was muted. I apologize. So first thing I want to say here is on the whole id poll nonsense, I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't care, because they're going to say it anyway, and we shouldn't bend to that. No matter what happens, if a Black lady was elected to the Supreme Court, they were going to say id poll. So I don't really care that he announced it. I hate playing the civility politics game, because every time we try to say something nicer or in a way that might please the silent majority, we are always get our dicks pushed in. It literally doesn't matter how we say it or what we say. They're going to do that. So I don't care. I really don't. But as far as like how the last five are treated, and is it the fault? Whose party is at fault? They're both at fault. And let me explain why. The Republicans are very, very clearly, they're not the party of substance anymore. They don't care about policy. They don't care about rule of law. They don't care about the systems that exist. They only care about power, right? The problem is the Democrats let that happen. That's the issue. The issue is that all this decorum that the Democrats try to play by the rules, and let's all sit in our chairs and make sure we have our ties on right. That stuff doesn't, the Republicans have abandoned that years ago, and the Democrats just haven't caught up. Now, I agree that there should be a sense of decorum, and I agree that we shouldn't have the situation that we have, but you only live in the world that you live in. If they're going to do this, pass laws to make sure that they don't do this anymore. Pass rules so that the hearings can follow a certain methodology and things like that to keep them under control. I just hate the way that we placate them, even in the hearings with Ketanji. I am tired of how much they allow Ted Cruz to talk over everybody else. Kick him out. You're the boss. You run the hearing. Kick him out. He's breaking decorum. Tell him that he's not allowed to talk. Tell him that he's not allowed to bring the shit in. And as far as are both parties actually just doing a political theater thing? Of course, but to say that they're the same is a little disingenuous. When you look at the hearing for Amy Coney Barrett, for example, was it political on the side of the Democrats? Absolutely. But they were asking about substantive hearings. Like, how are you going to rule if this comes to the court or if that comes to the court? How is it they were actually caring about what she would do as a judge, not attacking her character as a person. And that's where the difference is. The difference is they don't care what Ketanji does. They didn't care what Sotomayor would do. That's not what was on trial. What was on trial was them as a person. And that's where it's like we can say that they're both problematic, but if we pretend that one is not, if one is not, I would love a world where they both behave like Democrats, okay? Where they're both political, but at least it's substantively political. But this culture war bullshit over nothing, this putting CRT on trial because Ketanji's Black, it's racist. It just is what it is. And it's frustrating that we make excuses for it, that we make excuses for this theater, like as if like both, you're like, oh well, both parties want to get them in and this is just part of the game. No, it's not. It doesn't have to be. If this is the rules of the game, then let's change the fucking rules. You know what I'm saying? Like it's frustrating. So when I say that, is one party the cause of this? Yeah, 100%. It's the Republicans. But are both parties responsible? Abso-fucking-lutely. Democrats, grow a fucking spine. This is why you guys suck. You guys have no idea how to wield power, and that's why we are inevitably going to repeat these cycles over and over again.
All right. And finally, Rootsy.
This is solely on the part of the Republicans. There's no gray in this at all. If you look at the last 5, you have to look at who controlled the Senate and what the rules of the filibuster surrounding presidential appointees were during that control. Prior to Obama, throughout all of American history, up until Obama, we had 68, either 62 or 68 presidential appointees blocked, right? After Obama, we had 79. And I'm not talking Obama, Trump, and now Biden, just in Obama's first term and a half, there were 79. So that forced Harry Reid to change the rules of the filibuster, where it used to be you could filibuster presidential appointees, but they were like deputy undersecretary of like the Department of Justice Civil Division was getting, blocked. So that allowed for Obama to get some people through, but the filibuster remained for the SCOTUS case. And then, the molding turtle that is Mitch McConnell took over. We never had as a minority, we never had the votes, the 60 votes that the filibuster, implies to stop whatever they were going to do or to break whatever they were going to do. I'm sorry, that was the other way around. I just got totally turned around in my head. Anyway, back to the turtle. He pulled the whole shit with Gorsuch. Then he turned around and did the exact opposite with Amy Coney Barrett. It doesn't go both ways. And I get what I'm sorry. I'm so flustered right now. I had this whole thing planned out, but it just pisses me off when false equivalencies are made. And to say that this is on both parties is a false equivalency. I understand the frustration in wanting to see the Democrats fight back. I have screamed at my television many a time and said, you fucking fight, do something. They can't. They literally, the way the rules in the Senate are, they can't even change the rules. Like you need 60 senators to do basically anything, and neither party is ever going to get that. So I don't know what a harder fight would look like. I agree that it should happen. I agree that it's frustrating that it doesn't. I just don't know what that looks like.
Okay, so now I'm going to open it up to the full panel. Katarana, I know that you have a time crunch, so if you want to go first, I'd love to hear from you first, or if you want to address anyone else's statements.
Yeah, so I heard at some point that we didn't really, Democrats, let me differentiate. Democrats didn't really attack anybody's character. I would want to push back on that, but obviously, like, it's not like I'm mad about it, but like, I do think that there was more of a character-based thing when it came to Kavanaugh, though there was a particular reason why we would want to talk about their character and not the way that they're going to rule. If we think you're a rapist, perhaps we should talk about it. But it was a character-based conversation. But I think it's really hard, I suppose, to set up like a proper precedent as to what good behavior would look like when on one end you have somebody asked like Ketanji, were you happy when Clarence Thomas got appointed, as if any Black person would ever be like, yay, that's my guy. Like, no, but clearly like they're asking for a reason. But on the other hand, we have Democrats that are basically just saying like, hi, this is history. okay, bye. Like, you know, like they're also not really doing anything particular to even set the stage, because like that's not proper conversation either. The whole point is for you to like vet. So no one's vetting right now and everyone sucks. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's not wrong though.
Is that right? That's right.
I mean,
That's not wrong.
You ain't wrong about that.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was
go
just gonna say that I think that I understand that you say that like you get our frustrations and you get like you scream at the TV asking the Democrats to fight, and you're like, what would a better fight look like? Well, I think that's the issue itself, right? I think the issue, and this gets into something that's a larger political issue, which is the Democrats. There are more people that lean Democrat in this country than Republicans. It's not close. And in the optics game, we have to admit, we have to humble ourselves and admit Republicans are killing it. Republicans are able to disproportionately use their optics to leverage political capital. And that's the problem, is when we say a bigger fight, our candidates, our party should be doing that. The Democrats should be leveraging the optics and the political capital and making sure that the Republicans shouldn't have as many Senate seats as they do. But the fact that Biden barely got those seats in the Senate is an issue with the way that the Democratic Party chooses to operate. And the way that they choose to operate is they choose to stay within decorum. They choose to say, you know, they choose to come off very even and even keeled, and they don't go for the optical wins. They haven't modernized. There are some Democrats that have modernized their optical game, and they provide just the most delicious of dunks. And those ones are the most popular Democrats outside of their districts.
Twitter game strong.
Yeah.
No.
Oh God. But I think that I want to make sure that we're clear here. I think we all agree that this is the fault of the Republicans, and that the Republicans are fundamentally the reason that these rules are broken, and that the political machine's wheels have come off, so to speak, right? So I don't want to
I was going to say, I agree with, like, Democrats are horrible at messaging. I don't think that we are interpreting what that message should be the same way. And this might start a fight.
Probably won't, because I like it. Remember?
The defund the police thing, dumb as fuck. That was optically the worst fucking thing you could say.
Oh,
Go in here.
Let me tell
Please.
you, the sentiment behind it, incredibly popular. You know what you should have called it instead? Refund the community. Give those funds back to the community, right?
I think you're wrong.
Wait. Please let me do it, Aston. I'm begging you.
As someone who grew up a big beige person in a big beige world, I would like to say I know what suburban white Facebook mommies are thinking when they hear defund the police, and it is not, well, we should reapportion a bunch of these funds over back to different communities. No, that's not what they're hearing, and that's not how you're going to win them over.
Real quick, Tootsie, because I happen to, this is one of the few videos I've made. This is one of those where I've made a couple. Biden, if you go top down, like the top 20 highest, like, Democrats never once said defund the police, and they all very explicitly stated that they weren't pro defund the police.
They allowed it to get tight.
No city, they all spoke out against it. Biden particularly, he even proposed a plan where he gave extra money to police communities so they could add psychologists and social workers to it. Every single city added it, and it was in 20% in the polls because no Democrat even supported it. Nobody did this. That's a myth that, like, Ben Shapiro put. Nobody did defund the police.
That's not what I'm saying. They don't think that you actually did it. Like, that message, whether you like it or not, got tied to the Democratic Party.
I could say BLM's like a completely, like,
whether it's
police
true or not,
murder
people
group,
think Biden said.
So no,
right?
let me stop you. So let me stop you right here, because this is the actual issue. Where the actual issue is it doesn't matter what you name it. We have data, overwhelming data, by the way, that shows that as long as Black people are attached to an idea or a policy, Americans will naturally form against it. It does not matter what the name of the movement is. It does not matter what the name of the policy is. And when you wait, let me finish. The reason, the defund the police, the narrative, the name was not for normies. It was because the defund the police was a broad political coalition that included things like abolitionists and reformists, and to get them to work together, they needed a phrase that they all could back with their different political ideologies. So that was the way that they were able to form the largest coalition that has ever happened in this country.
But the Republicans, we have both admitted that the Republicans are fantastic at optics, right? So
but it doesn't. But I'm telling you, it doesn't matter
like
what
the
you change it to. It doesn't matter what you change it to.
The normies are the people you have to win over. It does. Like, I haven't seen the data. It probably could have been an easier sell if you hadn't named it that.
Nope.
So,
I'm on the ground. I literally could call it literally everything every day. This is something that I deal with directly. Like, no, the data is fundamentally 100%. It does not matter what you name it, as long as it's associated with Black folk, even if it's seen to benefit the group that is coming out against it, like things like welfare. It doesn't matter what you call it, as soon as there's an association with Black people, there is a fundamentally normie like retraction to it. Like the normies hate it. That's just America.
Then how would you?
Hold on, everyone, really quickly here. Paradigm, I haven't heard you jump in a little while here. Gonna put you on the spot.
I was enjoying the fucking fight, man.
I'm gonna put you on the spot here a little bit. Come on in.
Okay, so I'm gonna address the actual topic, and then I'm gonna reroute it back to where we were, so we all don't lose our place here. I understand the relevance of the both sides argument. Now I'm going to say something very broad and then specify it. I get that nobody wants to be the person to point the finger at the other person, because that's what we've been doing in the political circle for like decades, if not hundreds of years at this point. It's always somebody else's fault because we feel morally or justified within ourselves to say that we are correct in our assumptions about how the country should go. This is talking about political powers, and the other people want to stop that progress. That's easy to notice here. I will say, however, I think that the need for the Democrats to fight back is kind of the misnomer of us saying the Republicans control the conversation. They hold or wield more political power just in verbiage than actual policy, because it's easy to bring up a culture war and say da 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 this and da 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 that, but like they pass legislation in their states on that. Nobody stopped them. The people didn't stop them. The underlying courts did. There's a thing where I understand it. I think in Texas, if I'm not mistaken, the Supreme Court in Texas is like, we'll allow it, but there's still like intricacies in between where we could block it in this part or that part. But it's there. That's the conversation. The conversation is now repealing that, or the conversation is getting away with a different form of that. It's the fucking prohibition argument again. If you make something illegal, it's only gonna like be forced to. They control the conversational direction. They control the discourse. Whether we want to say it's both sides, we got to recognize Democrats open their, and this is where I'm going to segue beautifully into what we were just talking about. Democrats can open their mouth and say anything they want. Republicans can retort, "That's bad." People just listen to that's bad. They don't want the other side of the argument. They don't want to hear why it's bad. They like the fact that somebody's saying, wow, that's not a great thing. So when it comes to what you guys were talking about, it really doesn't matter what you call anything, because the sentiment will always be, well, okay, let's do this better in this form, because I am firing off on all cylinders right now. We want to say BLM's messaging, or the idea of Black Lives Matter and the idea of defund the police, is a bad label on top of the great sentiment of what it stands for. They don't want that shit regardless. And I don't mean to say they don't want it regardless. They've never wanted it in the first place because, and I hate when I bring this up, but if all lives matter, then we wouldn't have had a civil fucking war over slavery. Like, I can't wrap my head around, like, how would I package this? How do I package stop killing my people in a way that sounds good to you? Eventually, at some point, you're going to have to admit it can't be the message I'm giving you, because if you agree with the sentiment, but the message being delivered is like hitting you in the wrong way, the people who don't like the way they receive that message don't spin it in a way that makes them feel comfortable. What they end up doing is saying, ew, that sounds horrible. I'm not going to do it anyway, because you was never going to do it anyway. I remember that on Facebook. Oh my God, during the height of the 2020 protests, especially when I recorded that one in Brooklyn that went viral. Everybody was like, we agree with your sentiment, but what the way you're going about it is wrong.
No, it's like, not about the way you guys, we had the momentum. Black Lives Matter was the largest civil rights movement the world has ever seen. So you cannot just say, well, nothing we call it is ever going to matter, period, the end. Then why do anything? Perfect can't be the enemy of better, right? We had that momentum with Black Lives Matter. People were getting it, right? Like
no,
people
really.
that I never thought would get it. People like my Republican family, people like my ex's Southern, evangelical white mother from Alabama, like people were getting it. They were on board. And then people said defund the police.
In the right direction
that's literally not what happened. Literally, the people that you're saying that are on it never actually do anything.
But it was the largest civil rights movement
I
in the
know.
history of the world.
I was there. And at first, it wasn't the largest.
People must have been on board.
No, because the people always virtue signal. Virtue signaling is a thing that happens. People will always say it's rainbow capitalism. It has always existed. Now, the thing is I want to be very clear about what we're saying, right? If defund the police is like only 30% popular, let's say that number, what we're trying to say is changing the name, you might pick up 5%, but that's it. It's not enough to move anything.
But that's better.
Not really. It's marginal. And then wait. The 5%, the 5% you gain destroys the coalition, because the coalition was together because the phrase spoke to everybody.
But the coalition is never going to get you elected.
Fluff,
you
go ahead and
that
jump
5%.
in.
I want to go.
All right.
Fluff, go ahead and jump in.
I really just think like going back to like should Biden had said, is he going to elect a black, like he's going to pick a black woman, or like, and tying that like with changing names. Let's just be honest about what people want to do. The people that were going for defund the police wanted to defund the police. They didn't like so much money was being spent on a police force that doesn't give a fuck about them and beats the shit out of them. I think Biden said, I want to pick a black woman. Well, if you have a problem with him picking a black woman, come out and say it with your chest. Like, why should he hide it optically? Why should he say he wanted to pick a black woman? But if you imply, well, that means she's not going to be picked for her qualifications. No, it's obvious that he's going to pick a qualified black woman. So if you have a problem with that, well, then say you have a problem with that. Like, I don't really think we should adjust the optics I think we should just be honest about what it is we want. If anything, we could have named Black Lives Matter, like police, stop letting police beat up black people. Like, cool. Let's do that one. Like, I really don't like this game.
It could also just be complete obviousness. I mean, if you've looked at anyone's police budget, your own local police budget, if you go to your own town where you live and you look at the police budget, it is extraordinarily high in every single community. It's almost disproportionately. It doesn't make sense how much money is being allowed to each one.
None of the 50 fun fact, none of the 50 largest cities in America have reduced their police budget in a meaningful way in like the past 3 years. Like nobody did any defunding of the police.
We funded the police.
Didn't want to. Democrats didn't want to. Yeah, it actually went up in most cases. Democrats didn't want to. Like, I just don't.
Yeah, this whole
narrative. Let's be honest. If you don't like it, like, just be honest.
Yeah, this whole narrative that it's like the messaging and not the people, not the other people. Let's focus on dismantling their message and not dismantling our own, because that's the actual issue. Like Paradigm's saying, it's that they control the narrative is the actual issue. And us, like, it doesn't matter what we do. We need to take control of and until we actually we have groups, like until the Democrats were willing to stand up with their dicks and actually back it, Like, of course it's going to fall thing. And it's the same thing here. The reason why all this id poll nonsense keeps going around is because none of the Democrats get up and stand up and actually point out what it means to select a Black lady. And it's not just because she's Black, or what it means to be qualified in the first place. They don't ever point out that, hey, listen, if you think an LSAT score is the determining factor on whether or not like somebody should be a judge or not, like a single point of information, a single point of data is the only bit of information that you need to decide. Like, it's stupid, it's ludicrous, but nobody controls the narrative from the Democratic side. And that's the actual problem, not the fucking message itself.
Go ahead, Kat, jump in.
Cool. Yeah, I guess I can also, wrap my everything all in one, since it's almost my
Oh yeah, she has a heart out,
bedtime.
everyone. So I think she's gonna give her
Yeah.
closing statement really quick.
Yeah. So when I said that, I think it was not wise in terms of announcing it was going to be a Black woman specifically. It's not as much of like the optics about like, oh, they're going to think it's like, I think it's more of, I would think that by this point in Biden's life that he would know that like announcing that specifically could give somebody an imposter syndrome potential feeling. I mean, if every time something like interesting would happen to me in university, I would always think, oh, it's because they need a diversity hire, huh? So I guess it's more, I was thinking more on the perspective for her and like what she would endure, not as much as I sure hope the Republicans don't like think it's a diversity hire, because no matter what, yes, I know that they're going to do that. But overall, I think it's not like there hasn't been an effort for people to kind of bring up the idea that like what this means. I mean, when I was watching the part with Ted Cruz, eventually he just got cut off by whoever was presiding over the hearing, because they were like, you're not going to let her talk anyways. There's no point in you continuing to ask questions. It's not like you're going to let her answer. So it's not like people are just essentially sitting there and like eating popcorn as they harass a Black woman. And I think Cory Booker also was trying to make some of the points about like how momentous this is, but I think perhaps it just falls a little bit. I guess it goes back to what I was saying, where like one side is like barraging and the other side is like playing a game of soggy biscuit. So at the end of the day, now she's just kind of wet and hurt, I guess. Like, so yeah. But overall, I think it has been very interesting to watch. I think a lot of times when I've heard people say words such as what is it? Like mansplaining, or like the phenomena of like men speaking over women, it's not something I personally really like experienced. And a lot of times when I see it, it's within more of a acting atmosphere, so it doesn't hit the same. But watching this has been like pretty rough, honestly, and I think that's still really important for people to see that this is still a process that is going to be pretty rough for people that are different. And it's also just been cool in a weird way watching the last 15 years of Lindsey Graham's questionings, because him with like the last woman that Obama appointed, and basically how they were just like sitting there and shooting the shit. And then this one, I was like, wow, times have changed. So yeah, overall, thank you for having me onto this panel, because it's given me a very interesting little like homework assignment this weekend. Like, this is the only thing I've watched all weekend. And I'm fine. So yeah, you can find me at KATARANA anywhere. And I have officially reached enough subs to be monetized on YouTube, but not enough views. So if you would like to go ahead and support my channel, feel free to give me your views. And also, I bid you adieu. It is 12:32, and I'm going to keep on rapping. Okay, good night.
All right, thanks, Kat.
Love
Thanks
you,
for being
Kat.
here.
Miss you.
Thank you. And feel free to invite me to another one. I enjoy this.
Absolutely. For those watching, I'll have some links in my YouTube video for Katarana's Twitch and YouTube channel. So make sure you check those out.
I must say before you leave, it's Katarane.
Yes.
Oh, am I saying that wrong the whole time?
Fancy.
Wait, it's not.
Okay.
I didn't know I was saying it wrong the whole time.
No,
The screen name. Don't feel too bad.
Yeah. It's like if you're fancy, it's okay.
Oh.
The accent's made
well,
up. Don't
just
feel
not
guilty.
fancy.
It's not
So if you're Paradigm, you got special privileges here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed.
Okay.
He had
as if
his
she put like
pinky
an
out the whole
umlaut in there
time.
for randomness.
Excuse me. It's because I respect German culture. Okay. And okay. I knew I was going to live here ahead of time. So no. Okay. Well, I bid you adieu and have a good night.
All right. Yeah, Tiberius, I haven't heard you jump in on this conversation for a little while. You want to jump in on this?
Can I jump in? Yes. Can I do
Yes.
it without tossing a grenade into the conversation? Probably no, actually.
Go for
So like this might get a little bit on the more spicy side, but I've got two major points that I can hit this with. The first one is going over the data between BLM versus defund the police. I'm going to support Rusi to some degree on that. Was BLM huge? Yes. Not only was it a worldwide movement, but it also had originally when it started something like 70% in favorability. Now, granted, there's a really good conversation on great. How many of those people were actually willing to commit? There's a level where I think that's actually a really good conversation, but when it come down to it, I saw BLM marches in small town America, in conservative America. That was huge.
Sure.
So it had an impact. And I'm not going to act like there wasn't momentum that could have been capitalized on. That wasn't. The other side of that was defund the police damaging. Absolutely. There's a lot of data to back that up. I don't really have that on me right now. But the two big things that hit the political parties in the 2020 election was for the Republicans was COVID response, particularly because Trump was in office and they were seen as inept. When it came to the Democrats, the big hit was defund the police. It actually, according to the numbers I had, was something like 20% of the voter base said that was a major issue in what they were voting on, and made them vote where it was, when we got to the final numbers, was a 52-48 split. And a time where the country had been in a recession, was facing a pandemic. Usually whenever you have that kind of thing, the ruling power or ruling party is wiped out in a 2/3 landslide. So there was serious contention going into that. And I think defund the police was one of it. So we can get into that. The other part was the bonus topic. The bonus topic should a Biden openly be like, hey, yeah, we're gonna put up a black woman. I think this actually gets into a very, very strong moral case of the anti-racism movement versus the humanistic movement. I'll put it in this context, is that the anti-racism movement was largely I don't know who started it, but like people that made it famous was people like Malcolm X. It's like, look, we cannot escape the pillars of racism and what it has done in our history without addressing it full stop. You have to kinetically hit it with reparations, that kind of thing, to empower the Black community today, or we will never basically ascend from the scars that has left. The humanistic side was actually people like Martin Luther King that said, look, I want a fair and equal treatment under the eyes of the law and of the Lord. That's a really big conversation because while I do side with the humanist side on this for very, very many reasons, is I think both sides have a point. And I don't think anyone has a silver bullet on this regard. So yeah, we can just feel free to just dive into either of those.
But let me start with the Martin Luther King, because Martin Luther King was very much for reparations and fixing the issues. Like, the most people, when they're quoting him, don't actually, like, they take the headline quotes, they don't actually read his book. Go read Where Do We Go From Here? He very directly talks to this. In fact, his quote in that book says, in order for us to reach equality, this may offend white liberal sensibilities, but you must give like special treatment. Like, to give a man his due, you must sometimes give him special treatment, is basically like the quote. And he even says it's going to offend white people when you say that. Like, it's within the quote. So I reject that framing of Martin Luther King, but I always will. It's okay. He's my guy.
Excuse me, Aston. I have read I Had a Dream, so let me just correct you real quick.
right. Like he spoke.
I'm not accusing Tiberius of doing that either. I'm just making a joke.
I don't. Yeah, and I don't think that it's anyone's fault that they mischaracterize him at this point. He's literally one of the most mischaracterized people in history, like in American history. He was also like probably the most hated American in American history in his lifetime. So it's not. I don't blame that on anyone directly. But I want to point out, when you're talking about like BLM being the largest movement ever, and it absolutely fucking was. It was the largest extension of our movement, and you point out that it had 70% popularity. First, it didn't get anybody elected. It didn't stop Republicans from taking over Congress. It didn't do those things because there wasn't actual political capital behind it. Because again, for the most part, it's very easy to say Black Lives Matter, cool, virtue signal, but the actual actions and political capital behind it, like nobody wants to take those actions that we were talking about. Matter of fact, Black Lives Matter leaders were smeared the entire time. Like if you go back and you look at the reportings, and this comes through, and there were no Democrats that came out in wide support of when Black Lives Matter was at that high level of popularity. There were no loud Democratic voices backing them, just like there were no loud Democratic voices backing defund the police, minus, the usual suspects, so to speak. So I just reject this. I just have to reject this narrative from like the not only the direct experience, but also like from the outcomes of what happened. This isn't like the only time this happened. This isn't the only time people marched in conservative towns, by the way. People march in conservative towns back for segregation. This is a thing. This is something that's talked about.
But how do you think change happens, right? It doesn't happen in a revolution. I know people on Twitch like to think that it happens in a revolution. It happens incrementally. It happens sometimes incredibly frustratingly incrementally, right? So when you dismiss that 5% of normies,
let me
finish.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me finish.
Because earlier you said like it would have broken up the coalition, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that coalition was not ever going to vote for Republicans, right? That 5% might have. That 5% are the people that you have to win over. Those people in the middle, like as much as you hate them, as much as to some extent you probably see me as one, I'm sure you see Tiberius as one because I see Tiberius as one. No offense, Tiberius.
Whatever.
But
We'll get into a minute.
Those are the people that you have to convince, and to brush everything off like, oh, well, it's going to break up this coalition, or it's not going to get us elected where we want to be anyway. I just kind of see that as like, well, if it doesn't work, then screw it. And I have to fundamentally reject that.
No,
Paradigm
so
and
let me
okay.
respond because
Okay.
that was a response to me. I was in the middle of talking, so let me go ahead and say this. When I say that 5%, you have to understand that things are not necessarily incremental. Sometimes there are thresholds. That 5% wouldn't have reached a threshold that would have created political action. That 5% that you're talking about wasn't going to vote Republican in the first place. That's exactly the point that we're saying, is that it is actually within it's in the same demographics of the people that were already supposedly on our side. The people that were against the defund the police voted Democrat. Like it doesn't necessarily change it. And the reason why, again, I want to go over the defund the police, like the most, like, for example, if Black Lives Matter had happened, if it happened in reverse, right? If we had defund the police and then Black Lives Matter, we'd be reading the same stats off of Black Lives Matter losing the votes for the Democrats in those purple areas.
But what if Black Lives Matter had happened without defund the police?
No. Okay, if Black Lives Matter happened without defund the police, and it was still going in say 2016, those same Democrats would have lost. It's not an issue that was ever, like, I cannot explain to you any more clearly how it has it's an association with blackness that is a repeated pattern that we've seen throughout history. That doesn't say fuck it. I'm not trying to convince people. I'm not trying to sway people. I'm pointing out that the name of the movement doesn't change people's immediate reaction to the movement in a way that in any sort of politically significant way. That's all that's being said. Now, do you need to reach out to normies? Abso-fucking-lutely. Fun fact, like I have never found a normie that was against defund the police that I couldn't change their mind in 5 minutes of talking. But that 5 minutes of talking is what you needed to do anyway. So it doesn't really matter. So it's more politically.
But if it had been named better, you might not have had to do that 5 minutes of talking.
No, you would have. If you're paying attention to what I'm saying is it doesn't matter what we changed the name to. We still would have had to do the 5 minutes of talking. That's literally the point. That's the historical data point as well. And again, saying for the millionth time here, it has to do with a distance to blackness. That's literally the issue.
That's what I'm gonna DDoS you.
All right.
I want to go.
Go for
it. So I went and found my numbers, it really didn't matter. It really didn't matter what you named it. People just flat out didn't like the idea of defunding the police. Like, if we want to call it something different, then it should just be a different movement. People literally just did the average, taken over a month of studies, in polling, it was 58% of people polled flat out just opposed the idea of moving funds from police departments in any way, shape, or form. And it was only 31% support. The name says what it was about. If you want to say well, maybe they should transfer the funds to a different department slogan. Well, that's not what that movement was. That's not what that saying was about. It's a different thing. And also the incremental change, I know you've already owned it. So this is kind of a little jab, but I just couldn't help thinking in my head, that's some peak lib shit. The idea it's not not revolutionary. I know the only reason I'm saying that to you is because you already owned it at the beginning. So I know you're not going to take it too hard.
No, I own that fully. I think that's just the way the world works.
People just didn't want to defund the police. That's what they you can say you can rename it, but they just didn't want to do it. If we want to try doing a new movement, where we do something different, that's cool. We can try that, but let's not focus on. I really think it's a bit silly to focus so much on the name when people just flat out didn't want to do it.
So I saw Paradigm and Tiberius both their hands up. Paradigm, you want to go first?
So I'm gonna just throw myself here and say that Aston and Fluff are probably way better at what I'm about to say than I could ever put it into words. But I'm gonna fucking try because that's who I am.
WrestleMania.
Okay. Rootsy, do me a favor. Guess the number 1 through 10.
Am I supposed to say it out loud?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. 8.
Wrong. Guess another number.
7.
Guess another number.
6.
See how I control which number is the correct one, and no matter which one you guess. So at some point, it doesn't matter what your answer is. It is on to me to respond with whether or not you are correct or not. And currently in the little game that I just gave you, I'm controlling the rules here, right? I'm not giving you leeway to either tell you the correct answer or tell you if I'm telling you the truth. It's up to you to decide then how you would respond in kind. And obviously I would not to say, but I would assume to anybody here, if I kept telling you wrong, and you guessed all 10 numbers, you'd be like, you're full of shit. I'm not playing the game anymore. That's what Aston is trying to tell you about this entire thing.
It's not that I fundamentally even disagree in principle with what Aston is saying.
You're just not listening to what he's saying.
I am listening to what he's saying.
Okay.
Because it's about we are going back to optics, right? You want to control the narrative, but the Democrats have shitty narratives because the narratives that they're running with, at least the ones that we hear.
Let me stop you really quick, Roots, because I think this is the disconnect that you're having, because Aston's not pointing out anything about a narrative. He's pointing out the fact that the statement in and of itself, because it's connected to Black people, it didn't matter what the narrative was.
I understand that.
Right, but it doesn't sound like you're understanding it because you keep kind of bring it back.
I am, and I might not be articulating it very well, but you have to be you have to beat them at their own game. Doubling
it's the civility politics.
To some extent, yes. But if you want to eventually get that incremental change, you do, like you said, have to get the normies. And I understand that the message doesn't matter if it's attached to Blackness.
Can you give me examples of the incremental change that's happened over this country that hasn't come at the expense of bloody revolution?
I mean, that's a different question because they tend to go hand in. Like, you have to have a little pushback. You do. You do. You have to have the Malcolm X to the MLK, right? Like,
MLK, please stop mischaracterizing MLK. He was radical, very radical.
I understand that, but people like my point is you have to have the yin and the yang. Whether or not MLK is the right figure, actually historically accurate, represent that.
There was no
Okay,
yin. That's my point.
Can I just finish?
Sure.
The point is that you do have to have, right? Like, you have to have the people that go out and get the messaging done and get the normies. And you also have to have the shit stirrers, right? But on one side of the aisle in our politics right now, we have a party that is 100% nothing but really good messaging, really, really good messaging. So good that they can make normie people vote against their best interests time and time and time again. So when you hear the shit stirrers, it makes it a little frustrating because those Republicans aren't going to have a nuanced take, and they, like Paradigm said, control the narrative, right?
Tiberius, I have a question for you.
Giving them fuel.
Yeah, Tiberius, I think we're being a little cyclical right now. So Tiberius, I actually want you to go ahead and jump in really quickly. And Fluff, go ahead and ask your question too.
I'll let Fluff. Yeah. Go ahead.
Do you feel like are there any conservative slogans or like Republican slogans that have been used in the past like 4 years that don't like kind of exactly match what the movement was?
Make America great again.
It's so weird in the way that they do this. And I'll put it this way. One of the big things that I've noticed about conservative or like right-wing talking points is not necessarily that they're innate and explicit, because I can say make America great again, right? But that actually doesn't mean anything or like concrete. It allows you to fill in the blanks. I can say I'm pro-life or I'm pro-family or what, that kind of thing. But that doesn't mean anything. Does that mean sitting down with your family at dinner, or does that mean spanking your kids? Like, it allows people to fill in the blanks in a massive way. Defund the police was incredibly direct in how it worked. Now, that's actually one of the things I keep seeing with the left and the Democrats is that it's so poignant that it actually doesn't allow people to fill it in. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. I don't know. Because like BLM is the ultimate like litmus test for me on this one. There were so many people, and I want to like get in Aston with this a little bit. There were so many people that are like, oh, well, Black Lives Matter. Well, great. They want black supremacy. Wonderful. Like, it's one of those deals where I don't disagree with them in the regard that if you attach the black community on any movement, it does take a hit. It just openly does. The question that I have is like for Aston is, how do you make anything constructive out of that if it's just literally, at least a negative modifier, if not openly just gonna tank having the black community on? Go ahead. Sure.
The way that you do it is that you make a connection with the coalition that becomes powerful enough to overcome it. When you see it historically, what we had to do was we had to create very wide coalitions with people that have differing forms of view. When you say defund the police is poignant, it doesn't allow you to fill in the blank. That's a little bit of a misnomer. How do you defund the police? Some people want to burn it to the ground. Those are the abolitionists. Some people want incremental change. Some people want to move funds from departments. Some people want to make. It's all different. There's such a myriad and wide spectrum of strategies on how to deal with police brutality, and to get them all under one tent, you require a message that's going to get them under one tent. This is the same thing Martin Luther King did, by the way. This is the same way that we were able to start these large because at the end of the day, the status quo, the people in power are the status quo, and they're not usually going to move. Like, it doesn't happen. This is why it takes the shit stirrers, the radicals like Martin Luther King, who died the most hated man in America. He was literally assassinated. I can't say this enough. He was not loved. He was not a normie. He did not appeal to white sensibilities. He was a in your face radical. And that message spoke to us, spoke to the coalition, got the coalition to get their asses out of their houses and into the streets. And that's what changed the narrative. That's what caused the actual revolutionary change. And that's what made the Black Lives Matter coalition so wide and powerful. The problem is it didn't have any political power behind it. It was squashed. It was like there was a lot of things that happened in response to it. We had a whole president that opposed it. And those sorts of things are sometimes some things that are harder to overcome. I think the main thing that made it difficult to kind of overcome these things is actually the socioeconomic situation as inequality increased. And I saw this directly. The only reason why we had people out for the George Floyd protest was because most cities were in lockdown. That's why they got to go out. As soon as the lockdown lifted, the numbers stopped. I know because I put those protests on. I've had 10,000 plus people at a protest that I have. Now it's hard to even get to 100. Why? Because people have lives and capitalism is real, and it forces people to have to engage in activities for their survival. That is the difference. And you have to sometimes, most of the people that do this every day have ways to break themselves out of that system, but most people in America right now don't.
Okay, but you did, as we concede to you that there does need to be shit stirs, right? Mm-hmm. You have to concede that there does have to be.
Why do I have to concede that?
Because how do you grow that coalition?
Because with the message, the shit stirs grow the coalition. That's how they got
it. Listen, eventually you're only going to convince so many people with the shit stirs, right?
You're right. You're not going to convince.
Wait, I'm sorry, Tiberius, were you, what, did you even, I never got your answer on like I don't remember if you answered about like, do you think Biden should have said she was black or not? Like he was gonna like the black person.
Yeah, sure. I actually tried to outline that in the statement. I'm actually against this because I actually am very, very afraid that this brings back a tremendous blowback effect onto the black community. I have definitely seen in my experience that whenever this rhetoric is used, is that the black community gets turned into optically the fifth column, where it's like, oh, well, they're not actually being put into positions because they're qualified for it. It's because it's a virtue signaling, or it's because it's what do you call it? It's an act of charity, if you will. It blatantly makes the black community, in my eyes, become just kind of a target practice for politics. Now, if you want me to be super cynical in this regard, is that I think both parties have just fucked the black community time and time and time again, where the Republicans of today and the current party openly just despises the black community. And you have the Democrats that use them as a voter bank, but don't actually do anything for them, because what are you going to do? Vote Republican? No, you're going to vote for us. We're not going to do anything for you. I absolutely despise the way that the black community is handled in politics, but I also have moral obligations to be like, I could be wrong, and I don't openly make the assessment that I'm right. But I've seen how people voted for Barack Obama back in 2006 or 2008, excuse me, and the fervor that was behind him. And I've seen those same people now openly say white supremacist talking points. And it's very concerning to me how bad white lash is. But I am in the Midwest, and I am a largely white community in a largely white state. So maybe that's just an extrapolation or anomaly.
So,
but where
I appreciate you saying that.
100%.
I want to give you a chance to clarify, Tiberius, because like because it's kind of hitting me a little bit like you're almost saying like there's like the optics hit that comes with being black, and it's better to just de-blackify like certain things, like take away from like the black things are involved in it, like the take away from the fact that she's black, because that optics hit isn't worth it.
There is I'll put it this way. In the way that you say that, I kind of don't disagree with you. And this is where like the anti-racism versus the humanist perspective makes me pull up some ethical zeros. On one side of this is that I was raised on literally Star Trek, right? I wanted a humanistic world where we really didn't give a shit about your race. But is that actually practical? Is it viable? I don't know, because like, can the black community exist without getting, a leg up from where they are now? In some ways, maybe. I do believe that there is a lot of strong-willed individuals within the black community that can absolutely transform the community without help from the outside. But they have to want that. And there is no leader of the black community that I see. And that concerns me. On the other side of that is that is there going to be people that openly kind of shaft the Black community in a regard where they may be pigeonholed forever? That's a huge scare for me. So I don't know. I just don't have the answer for you here and what the right thing to do is. In some ways, I think you need to have people that are going to be like, no, we're here to help the Black community, and we're here because the Black community has been shit on. But sometimes when you do that, you're going to have a blowback effect, which is why I wanted to ask Aston, do the radicals actually make your situation worse in some regards, to where something is done in the name of Black rights and it actually comes back to bite you? And if you say no, then that's wonderful. Then, I think you've got to figure it out.
So this is the issue, and this is where it kind of comes down to fundamentally, right? Which is, does the statement create blowback? I mean, no more blowback than picking her. That's the thing I think that's getting missed, is that regardless on if he said the statement, her simply being picked we have the same thing when Obama was president. That is literally the thing that was said, when even amongst all the crazy fervor for Obama and hope and change and the progressive messaging, the number one reason is like, oh, you guys are just voting for him because he's Black. That's literally what was said most of the time. And he didn't say that. He didn't run on that message of vote for me because I'm Black. He actually distanced himself. There's a lot, FD Signifier does a great video on Black excellence, talking about how he created a distance between himself and Blackness and was still attacked for it. And so this is the thing that I think that people don't understand from the outside looking in, is that it is literally irrelevant. Like, are there radical Black people that make the situation worse? That's kind of a loaded phrase, because what do we define as radical, right? Because some of the ideas that I express may seem radical, but they don't really get the blowback. But are there, like, super woke skull, like, I hate white people, blase. Yeah. And that stuff, but that stuff causes different issues. But it's such kind of like a non-starter. This is what we call civility politics. This is something Martin Luther King actually talked about directly. The fact that we're supposed to, while we are being abused, like, curtail ourselves or make ourselves, like, suit our messaging for our oppressors that are oppressing us. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't work. We don't get anywhere when we do that. The opposite question is more important, which is why I pose that to Ritzy. It's like, when does incremental change actually happen? How does that, like, it usually, the incremental change only happens after the radicals come and smash things up a bit. Right? So you have to smash things up a bit for us to be able to get things. Now, you say defund the police, like, wasn't super effective, but I think it's Cambridge, New Jersey, fired all of their police staff and rehired them and rehired a whole different group. Since then, I think they have one of the lowest, like, prison rates in the country. The Denver police stopped arresting people for, like, over a year. Those are the actual material changes that are effective. Now, what did that do? A widespread? Absolutely not, because unfortunately we live in a system of white supremacy, and we need to be able to keep the movement going. We need bodies in the street, and right now the things that are happening politically, socioeconomically, prevent people from committing their bodies to the movement. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, you need people to change the system. I don't know how else. Every time you change the system, it's going to be seen as radical.
All right. I think I want to go ahead and just start with closing statements for everybody. So if you want to make any final statements on this topic, feel free to do so, as well as telling everyone where they can find you at. Go ahead and give yourself a good plug at the very end. I want to start with Rootsy this time.
Okay. Yeah, no, Aston, I appreciate your fervor, and I understand your narrative and the attachment to Blackness as the obstacle. I'm not going to completely ever believe that it can only be done by radicals. I think that you need a good shitlib or two as ambassadors to people that would otherwise not ever listen to the radicals. And I think if you ask me to point out incremental change, I would say it does go hand in hand with radicalism. But if you look at basically the entire history of the country, minus maybe the Civil War. Those two things have worked in conjunction with each other to get change done. I would also say I would love to come on the ground with you sometime and see what you do and organize. And I would love for you to come to the big beige suburbs with me and see how we can maybe find a way to convince both groups of people. You can find me again on Twitch at Maruzzi. It's capital M-I, capital R-O-O-T like Thomas, S-I-E, I think I spelled it right. You can find my book on Amazon. If you go to the Kindle store and just type in your right to organic tomatoes, it tends to be the first one that pops up. If you read the description, you'll definitely know it's mine. You can also find me on Twitter at Bish Trump is Cray. Yeah, it's been interesting and fun. And thank you.
All right, thank you. And next, going down to Aston.
Muted.
Sorry,
Muted gamer moment.
Hey, listen. Hey, Rootsy, I still love you, and I won't stop loving you.
I still don't
And-
give a fuck. I'm just
Hey, listen. If more people gave a fuck about the love that I had for them, I'd have a harem. Okay, so listen, I understand, and I want to say that I appreciate the offer. I will always take up any opportunity to stand in solidarity with even the libs that want to accept me and hear messaging and like work together. I'm always about building bridges. Let's not burn bridges. Let's build them. But I will always say that no, pretty much every time it's radical. Like the Civil War, radical. Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement. The only reason why we got the civil rights legislation was because of the riots that happened after Martin Luther King died. It's always radical. So that is the history of our country. And that's unfortunately the history that's erased from the textbooks that we read, because our textbooks aren't written in CRT, right? They don't actually take race into consideration. And most of the time, fun fact, the first historian ever given a degree in the United States was actually the guy that started the lost cause myth. So that's who writes the textbook. So that's our understanding of it is already fundamentally biased. But I want to say that on this moment, let's all remember, guys, like for the first time in history, we are getting one of the most abused groups to be in the most supreme powers, right? For the first time, the abuser will now get to set the laws for what dictates abuse. And that's important. That's why Ketanji matters. That's why this whole thing matters. For once, we need, like, the same reason why I say we need women on the council, the same reason why we need Black, because these laws affect people, and the people that are oppressed need to have a voice on what their oppression is. And that's why Ketanji matters, and that's why they hate her. That's what this is about. There's a reason why all the hearings that involve people of color, somehow racism and reverse racism gets brought up. There's a reason. And we're not going to really move past, and we're not really going to move past that until we break a couple of systems here or there, right? So I want everybody to know my name's Aston Mack. Again, you can find me at Aston Mack TV, at twitch.tv/Aston Mack TV. You can find me on Twitter as Mac_Aston. I do a lot of, again, activism. I'll show you guys what activism looks like. We're talking mutual aid. We're talking food pantries. We're talking interviews with activists. We're talking things of that nature. How do you try to move the needle in the politics of your municipality? What are policies that your local police department have that you can find scrutiny over? Check out my channel so you can find out. Besides that, I want to say thank you so much to Independent Thought for having me. Thank you so much for everybody on this panel. I love every single one of you. Thank you, Rootsy, for actually having a civil discussion with me and not turning this into clawing each other's eyes out. There's a reason why we are both on the left, even though I'm a little further than you. And it's okay, right? We have that's what was it that Hillary Clinton said? Like, don't you see the difference in the way that we fight? So that's important. And I appreciate everyone here. Have a good one.
All right, next we're gonna go to Fluff.
All right. So I feel like I've been very nice to people I disagree with on this panel. So I'm going to be a little bit aggressive towards the arguments and not towards you in general. When I hear about like this optics or incrementalism stuff, it feels really wild to me because it's not like black people are trying to argue for like, yo, let me get extra like ranch on my like salads. You know, they're arguing to be treated the same as everybody else and live the same lives that white people have been living for hundreds of years. Like they're arguing for equality, and I think to tell somebody like racist people to be or expect them to play this optics game or wait like while they're trying to get equality, I think it's just too much. I think it's really fucked up to do. I think that otherwise, I think the people on the panel that I've disagreed with, like Tiberius and Rutzi, I think you both did a very good job of conveying your points in a manner that I could easily understand. I think there's a lot to be said about that because I don't think there's a lot of that online. Like, to be able to share your point and me not think, wow, that was really stupid. I think you both are very clearly very smart, and I enjoy talking with people. As always, I love hanging out with Paradigm and Aston, and thank you so much for inviting me, Independent Thought. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, Tiberius, you're going to be on next.
All right. So, there was a lot we talked about. Well, we did talk about the Supreme Court. We also got into race relations, which is always just a fun topic because it is always spicy. But I always appreciate it, especially with having an actually diverse crowd. How many times have we talked about race and it's just full of white people? So I always, always appreciate that. So two things here. That I want to reiterate. Number one, this candidate is by all means qualified. I'm not going to detract from that anyway. There is literally millions of people that would actually be qualified, or I'm sorry, hundreds of thousands of people would be qualified, many of them in the black community as well, that could take this position. So I'm not going to detract like, oh, wait, we can't put a black person on the Supreme Court. It is very, very concerning to me in how the optics that we use. And while Aston and I cannot, and Fluff really did punch above their weight in this particular argument, is that I do have some serious reservations, but it's also in the regard that it is my lived personal experience that I think I want to talk with Paradigm about at a later date, is that I have seen people who were far more pro equality, far more pro equal rights, and far more pro just supporting the black community completely walk the other way in my lifetime. And it's been a radical shift. And it is incredibly frightening to me how I have seen people within my community go from, hey, you know what, hope and change, Barack Obama, let's get a brother in there, to no, we will never, or I've heard the phrase, I will never vote for a black person again in person. And it's very concerning to me. So I do think that there is a way to reach out and touch, but maybe it's material, because one of the big things I'm seeing in my life is that it's getting harder for everyone just to get by, and that does breed extremism. But there's other sides of that where maybe we are playing the optics wrong. And I'm not going to openly just say it's one way or the other, because I think it's multi-vectored. I think it's multifaceted. And I just want the best for my fellow man, even though I don't always agree on how we get there, because I do believe blowback is a serious concern. I've seen it in history. I like to study history, and while I'm not the best at civil rights in the 1960s, is that I saw what happened in Germany. And the scary part is that I'm seeing a lot of echoes, not only in North America, but also in Europe today, about what led to fascism in the 30s for both Italy and Germany. And I'm concerned. I am greatly concerned. So without further ado, I've been Tiberius D. Come check out my geopolitics stuff over on my Twitch and YouTube channel. Really appreciate it. But also, if you want to just watch my Star Trek reviews or why William T. Riker is a really interesting character, go check that shit out. I love doing it. So
Star Wars would always be better.
Pros and cons. Anyway, Price, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. This has been an absolute pleasure. It's been civil. It's been productive conversation, and I always appreciate that more than any other. So if you want to have me back on, I would be absolutely privileged to do so.
Absolutely. And finally, paradigm shifts.
So I have heard a lot, and I have ingested a lot. I think that let's do this step by step the way I had it in my head. One, Mr. Price, if I'm not misgendering you in a way, because you never know. I respect everybody. You just never know. Like, you'd be like, hey, I appreciate you. Like, I do want to say, I think I really like how you let the conversation flow, but you also like stood in your ground and like, hey, conversation's going a certain way, let's redirect that way. I do like your moderation style. I feel like everybody respects you in the space, and that's something that's importantly needed. You're not here for the and I'm not calling anybody out, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. You're not here for the smackdown, you're not here for the yeah. So I wanted to say that. To everybody here, I want to say,
are you talking about Destiny? Yeah.
I do also want to agree with Fluff. It's nice to hear differing viewpoints that are explained in a way where I don't think you're a fucking moron. Like, I think I got a lot of that today. Like, regardless of how you feel, regardless of your nah, you'd be fucking surprised. You'd be so surprised. Oh my God. So it's nice to like, and I always say that, like, no matter what your viewpoints are, give me a little substance, and y'all got a lot of substance. Everybody here had a lot of substance. To have a final thought on this, I think that when it comes to Biden and it comes to the Supreme Court and it comes to optics, I think that we all have to recognize that we're in a very technologically sparse age where, like, and I bring this up, I had a whole thing on how YouTube killed the internet. Like, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all these things are younger than us, younger than the youngest people on this panel. So it's still a space that people are learning to navigate in a way that makes them feel okay with being there, as well as also dealing with challenging view thoughts. The fact that anybody could comment on anything and you might get into an argument over some random shit that was just off the top of your head, like nitpicking, blah, blah, blah. I think that we're all in the camp of things need to get better. But I also think that there's this breadth of all these generations having an input, as opposed to, and this might be a really big misnomer for me to say, so anyone can correct me, but before the kind of erratic era of the internet, we all formed these opinions as groups and kind of carried them on generation after generation. Now it's kind of like everybody says everything at once, whether you grew up in the 1940s, Nancy Pelosi, I hate you, or you were born in the year 2002, and if you were born after the year 2000, you do not exist to me. So just gonna say that, because that shit's not possible. My birthday was 2000 and that's a compound sentence. You're still going. Anyway, I think that at the end of the day, with all the different viewpoints that we have, not in this group, and not in this panel, but as a whole, with the idea of sharing on social media, I think that incrementalism will eventually fail just due to the amount of voices that will say, but we could do this, but we could do that, and it naturally will push itself past that point anyway. But that is, yet again, a multifaceted conversation that will take years to get through. And by that time, I hope that we don't end a nuclear war, but like, let's see what happens. And the last thing I wanted to say was, ladies and gentlemen, if you liked what you saw today, please do me a favor and follow me at twitch.tv/the_paradigm_shift. Please let Twitch know to give me back my username. I hate the underscores. You can follow me here for games, poetry, art. Sometimes I just ramble on for hours and I let my ADHD spiral me. I currently play Wordle every day, and then I play a game where you got to solve 8 Wordles at once. That shit is crazy. Could you believe it? You should come and check it out. We're currently playing Final Fantasy VII to learn about eco-terrorism and the terrible ideals that you shouldn't be following through. It's funny that you mentioned Star Wars, because I feel like every Republican under the sun watched all these sci-fi films, played Final Fantasy, did all of that, and didn't get the message. So we're trying to dissect the message. And if you like what you hear, please do me a favor, follow me on Twitch. But if you're not a live streamer, hit me up on the YouTube.com/the paradigm shift. I'm cool. At least I think I am. My dad thinks I'm cool, and that's enough for me.
All right, just so everyone knows, I am subscribed to Paradigm Shift on YouTube, so I think everyone else should be too. As far as all my panelists are concerned today, everyone is invited back on. I thank you all for being here. I appreciate the conversations, appreciate how civil it was, but how informative it was. For anyone who's interested in getting involved with these content creators, again, go into the episode description. If you're on YouTube right now, there'll be links to everyone's channels in the episode description. And I'm hoping to have everyone back on again in the future if they can make some time for an independent thought panel. So thank you for all the listeners and all the watchers today, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you.